Councilmember Moody. Here. Councilmember Wilson. Here. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. And now, if you would like to join us, Councilmember Lewis, would you please lead us in a prayer and a pledge to the flag?
Father God, as we come tonight, we thank you for this hour that we assemble together, asking that thou would bind our hearts and our minds together, Lord, as we deliberate for the citizens of this city, Lord, that thou just help us to make good and sound and great decisions, oh God. Bless this city, Lord. Bless this state. Bless this country. Lord, as we celebrate this Christmas season, Lord, that thou would just look down upon those that are less fortunate than we are, Lord, that thou would just bless them in a mighty way. Bless those on foreign fields, Lord, that are working to protect us in our military, Lord, that thou would just guard and protect them. Keep your arms around them. Do more for us than we able to ask. These are not only the blessing we ask, not because we're worthy, but it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Amazingly, we don't have any official presentations and recognitions this evening, but I'd certainly like to recognize that I'm feeling a heck of a lot better than I was a week ago, and I'm very thankful for that. And I do want to share with everyone, I think y'all know this, but if there were the unlikely event that there were an emergency, we have these two exit doors down here and one in the room to our right. Do not use the elevator if that were to occur. And we've got the two stairways going down to the first level and then the one going out the front. So that's our way out, just in case there's an emergency, so everybody's on board with how to get out of the building. And I would like to just extend to all my fellow council members and to our citizens that are here a most joyous holiday season this year. A happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and we've had an interesting, fun, and sometimes challenging year, and I just want to express my thankfulness to council and wish you all the very best holiday season this year. Now, we have some public hearings before us this evening. I would like to ask citizens when they come forward to speak on any matter to first give us their name and address, and ask that you keep your remarks to a 2-minute limit. I think we have 4 or 5 items up for public hearing this evening. The first is an ordinance regarding redevelopment projects and the availability of affordable housing. So, Mr. Morgan, or is anyone going to make a presentation about this matter? Mr. Lindsay? Maybe not.
This is from housing, the first item.
This came from housing, and but the matter in front of us allows for affordable housing to be an eligible expense for our Cooper River tax increment finance district. So that's what the matter is about. I got that right, Gianna?
Yes, sir.
That's right. Okay, so would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
Evening. Muhammad Idris. Is this affordable housing about the area by the Cooper River Bridge, or what this is about? I'm trying to get some kind of understanding, because I knew you all said one time that you was moving the people out to get earthquake-proof schools and etc., and they would have the first privilege to get these homes when it's open, when it's available.
This is about the area that we formed called the Cooper River TIF District, and it basically runs from about Line Street north for 5 or 6 blocks and over to Morrison Drive, and it allows us to be able to spend those TIF dollars for affordable housing.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Move for approval.
Would anybody else like to be heard? We have a motion to approve. This is for second reading. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. All right. So our second and third matters kind of go together, and I think Mr. Morgan will be making a little presentation about this.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to get the screen pulled up here so you all can see where these properties are. Number 2 and 3 are essentially the same potential project together and are requesting the same ultimate zoning category, the MU2 workforce housing on both of them. I'll show you a zoning map in the middle in a minute, but just so you are familiar, it's on the 10 Society Street and 2 vacant parcels on Society. It would be rezoned from general business to the MU2 workforce housing. And then we also have 32 Lawrence, which is a vacant parcel on Lawrence, and it would be rezoned from GB and light industrial to MU2 workforce housing. And I will go to the maps now. Here we go. The number 2 is on the left, number 3 is on the right. And again, you all might more commonly know this parcels on the left is the old Veggie Bin site here in Lawrence. This is the current Harris Teeter, the State Ports Authority area, parking lot. The hardware store and a Domino's is here. Then on this image, which is immediately adjacent, parking, the Brewers Paint Center, the new Housing Authority development here, and again, the ports. This is an image of the overall zoning in the surrounding area, and again, you see the light industrial that's at the top in the darker color, and then the GB in these parcels. We have MU up at the Gadsdenboro Park area and nearby, and then, of course, Ansonboro is over to the west. The Century 5 Comprehensive Plan calls for this area to be part of our urban core, which is where you would have the densest, most intense types of developments. Given that and the heights that are in the area, our staff feels comfortable with the request to the MU2 workforce housing and recommend approval, as does the Planning Commission.
All right, would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Angela Black Drake. I live at 28 Anson Street, and I'm here to represent Hannah. And we'd like for the record to say that the Historic Ansonboro Neighborhood Association is pleased that the Southern Land Company was willing to engage the residents of Ansonboro over the course of the last year and negotiate an agreement that addressed many of Hannah's primary concerns with the proposed rezoning and development. We recognize that rezoning is not conditional. However, an important commitment made by the Southern Land Company to Hannah is that assuming approval of the rezoning request, Southern Land Company will seek to defer the second and third readings by City Council to occur within 30 days of closing, actual property closing. The agreement with Southern Land Company was recently approved by the membership and the board of Hannah. On the basis of this agreement, Hannah does not oppose Southern Land Company's application for rezoning. So surprise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Jason Crowley, Coastal Conservation League. We are the next door neighbor of this property, and just as Ms. Drake just mentioned, the developers have been working very closely with the community, the neighbors, the advocacy groups to make sure that they had a strong level of transparency and cooperation, and it's really been a great demonstration of how new development and infill development can work with the community to bring people together instead of put them at odds. And I wanted to specifically also point out the excitingness about this rezoning in particular, using the MU2 rezoning, because this will contribute into the Affordable Housing Fund either through the creation of units or into the fund directly so that the city could build their own units if the developer so chooses. And so it helps go one step closer to addressing our affordable housing crisis that we have in this city. We have 2 houses coming on market this week, as we saw in the paper, and this will bring us one step closer. And so it's been a pleasure to work with the community and the developers on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Will that make you a YIMBY?
Yes, it does.
Yes. That means yes in my backyard. Okay. Would anyone else like to be heard? So, and I will, for risk of repeating, this will be a requirement for our new MU2 requirements, which will almost double the affordability component of our MU2 zoning, or allow the developer the chance to pay us a fee in lieu, which we can invest in affordable housing. So much better position than we were a year ago since council passed that requirement earlier this year. So that being said, would this matter like to come before council? We have a motion to approve. Any comments or questions? This is 2 and 3 together. Yes.
Second.
Councilmember White.
Let me, for my colleagues, let me just quickly give a little info on this. The amount of time the developer spent meeting with all the community groups is significant. And where this project started and requesting this zoning to where it ended is a much better spot than we were probably at least a year ago, I think it feels like now. And one of the things I want to point out is that there was some question as to whether MU2 zoning on this site was correct zoning sort of under any circumstances of development. And so the community did not feel that under just any circumstance it would be okay to put MU2. They felt that putting it on MU2 for this specific development, as it's been identified and outlined by the current property owner, or the proposed developers who have it in the contract, and so they're not opposed to it based on the plans that they've seen and the agreement that they've got with the developer. That having been said, there was a concern whether or not moving this project forward and putting this zoning on here in the event the developer decided not to move forward with their proposal, that would then allow for a significant amount of density, much more so than would be right on this site. So that's the reason why we've asked that we give this first reading and that we withhold second and third reading until such time as it goes to closing. So it gives the community a little bit more ability actually to I guess have some protection on this site from a rezoning standpoint until such time as it does go to closing and we know it's going to close. But otherwise, again, I want to hats off to the developers and the willingness to meet countless numbers of times. They come to town numerous times. They met with me, and I've had probably a dozen conversations with them, at least individually. And I know Hannah and others have as well, so I appreciate all their diligence. I know sometimes doing business in the city of Charleston can be a little challenging. We ask a lot of people who want to develop in our city to do things the right way, in the way we believe will be a good asset and an inclusionary process with taking into consideration our community and where there'll be a new resident and neighbor to. And so I appreciate that. We always end up with better projects when we go through this process. It doesn't feel like that sometimes, but we always do. And so again, I appreciate all the time y'all spend. I think that we're in a good spot, and I will move that we approve items 2 and 3.
All right, Councilmember Seeking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just very briefly want to speak not as a council member, but as a property owner in Anson Borough, and thank Councilmember White. He really did lead this charge. It was a complicated process, and it did not start out as well as it is ending, to say the least. And the bifurcated approach that he suggested between first and second and third reading really is a tool that I think is something that we can probably utilize going forward as a pretty good model, because it allows some comfort of the homeowners association to know that the project that's proposed is really the project ultimately getting built as the property goes through the closing process. So I want to thank Councilmember White. It took a lot of time to do this, and I sat through a lot of those meetings, and he really did a remarkable job, as did the Anson Borough Neighborhood Association. So this looks like it's going to fly and be a good project. We'll just have to see as it goes through the closing process and see how it all works out. So thank you.
It sure wouldn't have to walk far to get to the grocery store. That would be a nice thing. So, Councilmember Mitchell, did you have your hand
I
up?
just made the motion.
You made the motion. Okay, and we had a second. Okay.
Okay, whatever, use whatever one you want.
Councilmember Seekings made the initial motion.
Yes, he did.
You want Councilmember White to have it?
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, number 4 has been deferred by the applicant, but since it is advertised, we will certainly be open to the public if anybody wants to make a comment regarding number 4. Mr. Morgan.
This is 3265 Maybank Highway. It's a request to go from commercial transitional to general office.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? And it's again deferred, so I don't think, it was requested by the applicant, so we're good. Councilmember Wagner?
I'm just kind of curious if, just give me a hint what that was going to be. I mean, I've been sitting there studying this thing for 2 or 3 days. It's all CT all the way around it except where it bucks up to the St. John's Bud.
Yes, sir. It's my understanding that there was an office use that was not allowed in the CT that would be utilized under the GO zoning in that location, and that is what the intent is, but he's on hold for a little bit, waiting to see what happens with that office user.
Yeah, I think there was somebody was trying to put a restaurant or something back in that general area, and I'm just trying to figure out exactly where it was.
The GO would prevent a restaurant. If it
Right.
went to GO, it would not allow a restaurant.
Got it.
Do you know what the use was that was allowed in GO that's not allowed in CT?
I believe it may be a contractor office
I see.
that is somewhere else on Johns Island that would locate in that location.
I see. Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll move forward with number 5. Mr. Morgan.
This is a piece of property out by the West Ashley Circle. To orient you all, this is Glen McConnell Parkway, bridging over the railroad overpass here. The West Ashley Walmart is in this location. It's actually zoned on a piece of property zoned light industrial. And then this kind of mauve color is the the gathering place zoning. And the request in this location is to go from gathering place to general business. This is a site, here's a broader zoning map that is a little bit clearer. We jumped ahead. Here's an aerial image of the site again, and there is some wetland on the site, and I've got an image that shows how much of the site is wetland, and they would not be building on that area of the site. This is the street view of the site. This is a road leading into the Walmart. This is the site. It's currently wooded. And here you see areas that are designated as wetland areas, and this somewhat corresponds with the 100-year floodplain out here, so most of the site that they would be building on is outside of the 100-year floodplain that, of course, is subject to the moratorium out there. Staff and Planning Commission were comfortable with the request and recommended for approval.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Anyone on council? Councilmember Wagner? I believe this is your district?
Yep, that's right in the middle of my district. And this, all right, I haven't had a chance to talk to y'all about this, but it's still only going to be one way in, which is a right turn off of Bees Ferry, or Glen McConnell, right?
Yeah, access would be from the West Ashley Circle, and also
Okay.
probably from this side road that leads into the Walmart, but you would not have access onto the Glen McConnell Parkway.
Okay. Where's the gas station?
The gas station is right in here.
Right there, and yeah, where you had to come up and out over to Glen McConnell off West Ashley.
Yeah.
And that's a right turn only. You cannot make a left turn in there.
That is
Well, I'm kind of
correct.
curious. That's that one little corner there. And I'm just, that and there's a whole lot of the rest of that West Ashley Circle area that is actually gathering place right now.
Yes, sir.
Just one little chunk of it? Or
Yes,
are
sir.
we talking about slowly eating up the other 2 pieces as well?
We're working on those, yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, because, you know, that's like one bite at a time. And I think we did that when we went over here to Floyd Circle too, which is on the other side. I'm just kind of trying to get my bearings on what we're trying to do here and how we're trying to do it, and we haven't talked about it, so.
And I think in general, the hope is that we still have the mixed-use type of uses here, but the gathering place zoning has a lot of issues with it that have created issues not only with adjoining neighborhoods, but also with some of the potential purchasers and property owners. And so we're working with them to come up with zonings that work the best for their sites, but still create this kind of mixed-use, walkable environment that had always been envisioned around the West Ashley
No
Circle.
clue what we're trying to put there.
I believe that they are looking at both.
On the other side, you got apartments coming in. and
I believe that
that's
they're-
kinda what's bothering me.
Yes, sir. They're looking at commercial and residential development on this tract, and those would both be allowed by general business. And they're currently allowed by the gathering place as well.
And under general business, we're not going to be able to do that. Yes?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
If we go general business, the residential goes away.
It still allows residential. It does have a density cap in general business, whereas you don't have that in gathering place.
You could still do 26 units per acre.
Yes, sir.
And it's good that acreage.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Respectfully suggest myself that given that half of this area is in wetlands and some of it's in our 100-year floodplain that is still currently under a building moratorium, that until we get a little more definitive plan from the developer, I respectfully defer to this until we have some.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit there, Mayor, but good for you. I mean, my question is, I mean, you sit there with the West Essex Circle, which from Google Earth, if you look down on it, is the bullseye for all of the problems that we're having with flooding out in this part of the world. We've got a large piece of property which mercifully is going to go away from gathering place to something else. But my question is sort of in line with the mayor. Why are we even thinking about rezoning property that we don't know what's going to happen with it in the future when we still don't have any solutions for what's happening on the dirt there? It's flooding like crazy, and we've got a very expensive fancy pants report that tells us we got problems. We don't have any solutions for it yet. And that nice little yellow grid that you've got going on there, with all due respect, when we have the next storm, that yellow grid will be over that entire piece of property, the whole circle area and everything. So I just think we're getting way ahead of ourselves, and with the whole issue of flooding in every part of the city, and because we know we've got large-scale flooding problems here, we've spent lots of money on a study that tells us we've got problems. We have no solutions. It seems to me that any rezoning, any zoning, any planning we do has to be consonant and consistent with a long-term plan for relief for the flooding first, and infrastructure, and all of those things. So I'm not a huge fan of moratoriums. None of us around here are, but we've got one sitting there right now. And on the backside of that moratorium, I can tell you this one council member who's going to be around for a little bit longer is going to want solutions to the big picture problem. And, you know, we go rezoning big hunks of property with no real plan on what's going to happen in the future, with flooding all over the place. I just think that rezoning individual parcels in an area that's subject to a moratorium that does not yet have a long-term solution is just getting ahead of ourselves and is not good planning. So I'm going to vote to defer it, or I'm voting no.
Thank you. I agree with everything that Councilmember Seekings just said. I would offer, first of all, y'all are going to get, with the general business zoning, you're going to get an apartment complex. At 26 units an acre, you're going to get an apartment complex, because every developer that I have fought so vigorously keeps telling me that there's no market for retail and commercial. So they have to go the apartment route. So take it from me, that's what you're going to get. Secondly, when are we going to eliminate the gathering place zoning altogether? Just putting it out there. I think it would be in your best interest. It's such a mess, and it has such a bad reputation, it can't overcome that. So I think you would be wise to consider that moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, just one more point. Now that I've kind of acclimated myself to the bearings, I believe that is where the wetlands are, that south, that would have been the eastern, yeah, right there.
Yes, sir.
You come over to that black piece right down there behind it, that boundary. Is that not the railroad?
That's the railroad, yes, sir.
The railroad dike?
Yes, sir.
That,
And I believe I have a,
that's the railroad. It
yeah,
goes right up
this is the
under
100-year floodplain
There it
as
is.
well. This is the
Yeah,
100-year
McConnell
floodplain.
right
Here's
there.
the subject property, here's the 100-year floodplain too.
So, yeah, I think the only smart move here today is ask for deferral.
With the message, Mayor, that getting rid of gathering places is good. I agree, we need to do that, but we need a long-term plan. So, Mayor, I don't think you can make the motion. I'll certainly make the motion to defer with some sort of directive that we need a long-term plan for the area before we get site-specific on rezoning.
That's a motion.
Second.
Yep. Any further discussion?
For the deferral, but what is the zoning now?
It's gathering place.
And how many units per acre that allows?
It's Unlimited based on the different heights that you can have depending on the types of streets that are adjacent.
And if it were general business, how many units would it allow?
It's 26.4 units per Highland acre.
So we're looking at potentially 26.4
Yes, sir.
versus unlimited.
Yes, sir.
That's our position right now.
I mean, in other words, that is what is before council.
I agree. In other words, there's a zoning in place now, right?
Yes, sir.
Which
Yes, sir.
allows unlimited
That is
potential.
correct, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Other than limits by height.
And in your opinion as a professional planner, is unlimited more dense than 26.4? I don't want either, but I mean,
It would be.
so I mean, we're going to kick the can down the road, but at the end of the day, there's a zoning on this property, and the property owners has rights. So we're going to defer it, and I'm going to vote for the deferral. What do we hope to achieve on the other side for this deferral? How do we change the reality of gathering place that none of us like?
By having a regional plan going forward for flooding relief and land use, which would not be having gathering place out there, but you can't have anything there. You can't gather, you can't build, you can't have anything until you have a plan to move the water. And that's the issue for me, that we need to be thinking large scale. You are in between the trestle, which is a barrier to water, and the West Sassy Circle, which is a barrier to water. That is a massive gathering place of water. So my complaint here is that we're getting ahead of ourselves in rezoning before we know what the long-term plan out there is. And right now, nothing's happening because there's a moratorium. We'll figure this out before the moratorium is lifted, so no gathering places getting built out there, okay? Just let's not rezone yet, because we may rezone to something we regret later. We've got a moratorium. There's no hope that a gathering place is going to get built. We need to have a big, long-term plan. And that's what I'm hoping and actually demanding, that this happens.
Yeah,
Sure we can.
See, all of that
Well, right now, they can't do anything because there's a moratorium out there. Well, it will be until we have a plan.
No, that's not accurate, and you know that's not accurate. The moratorium is to expire when? Do we know when the current moratorium is to expire?
And it went 6 more months. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we cannot extend the moratorium into...
No, we better have a
As a
plan.
matter of fact, at the previous couple of meetings, you talked about property owners' rights, so there are rights there right now. Again, I'm going to support the deferral, but I don't want people thinking on the other side of this deferral that we're going to have a long-term zoning plan for this piece of property unless we're willing to buy it as a city.
Mayor. My sentiments exactly. For council's benefit, one of the issues that you'll be facing or addressing once our Plan West actually goes before the Planning Commission and before here is that one of the things that we're talking about is exactly this issue about as we develop into this particular areas of West Ashley that flood, a plan to address flooding issues. So I think we're maybe, as my math teacher would say, simultaneously together at the same time as we're going through the moratorium and considering a plan that Councilmember Seekins is addressing, we'll have this for your council's consideration as one of the tenets of sustainability for West Ashley, this particular issue about flooding and stormwater runoff. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we are looking at and are considering how to address that particular issue. So it's going to come in front of us.
I have a question for Councilman. Really, how does, after we get this plan in place, how does that plan take away gathering place from the landowner?
Well, and that's something that it doesn't do. It's not going to take it. It's not going to take away. I mean,
I just want to be clear on that.
That's right. It's not going to take away. But I think that our discussion is a very healthy discussion. As to what we're zeroing in right now and focusing on right now is this particular problem, because it's sort of like you throw a pebble into a pond, you cause a ripple effect, and that's been the whole problem. I think I'm not an engineer, but I think that's been the whole problem. What's happened over here in the Church Creek Basin is that you create one problem that creates another problem. It's a domino effect. That's my understanding of what's happened. And so we just got to be stewards of this and making sure that as we're developing this area, which the landowners and property owners are entitled to do, that we're not creating a bigger problem than what we have right now. And that's, I think, what our concern is. And tonight, but the points are well taken with all of this.
Just a couple of questions. Say after November, the moratorium's over, okay? Right now, the owner wants to request general business versus gathering place.
Yes, sir.
The owner also has the prerogative right now to pull this back and keep the gathering place zoning.
Yes, sir.
And as a result of that, we have less control over the density that can be built on that property under gathering place.
There are a lot of urban design
under gathering
controls, but there's less control over the units. That is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to get clarification because I'm going to support the deferral, but I just don't know where it's going to take us. I agree that we need a comprehensive study, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if it's not going to get us to a place where we can decrease density, I'm just not sure what we get for it. And how long will this comprehensive plan take? And whether or not the owners are willing to even wait for the results of that, because they don't have to. They currently have a gathering place zoning, okay, of which we've been talking about trying to get rid of for the last 2 or 3 years. And I just don't want to squander this opportunity, because to me it is kind of a down zoning, at least the way I look at it.
Mr. Morgan,
Yes, sir.
how many acres is this parcel?
Let me see. 21, and some of that is wet.
Where, because I know we rezoned another section of that circle before, away from
Yes, sir.
gathering place. And
Yes,
I think
sir.
the gathering place requires you to have, what, about 80 acres or something like that? Have we in effect?
To be zoned into gathering place, it requires 80 acres. It doesn't require that for an actual development review plan. And this area, when it was zoned, gathering place was over 80
has to be 80
acres. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if we keep carving out gathering place, don't we eliminate it altogether?
I think as long as the gathering place zoning is there, folks would be grandfathered in. They wouldn't have to have the 80 acres because it's already been set. That's to rezone to gathering place, that requirement is. But
I guess my concern, I'm going to vote for the deferral too, but basically what we're doing is we're kind of damned if we do and damned if we don't here. I mean, we keep carving out this gathering place. All of a sudden you don't have a gathering place and you end up just like you did over on James Island with a piece of land with unlimited density, and the developer can do that. And because it's zoned gathering place, but that area over there never was a gathering place. At least this one was at one point. But have we already destroyed that? I don't know what the total is.
Well, we think there is still potential there to do a good mixed-use development, that's walkable, that has residential, that has commercial, all those types of things. Of course, a lot of this site is not in the 100-year floodplain, and I should clarify that. So there is a portion of the site that is not subject to the 100-year floodplain, and that is this portion here, probably half of the site roughly. That's not subject to the moratorium, so they could theoretically work for a gathering place type of development there. I think it would be difficult given the requirements of the gathering place, but that is something that is out there.
So this actually relates to the next item that's on the agenda, which, if you'll recall, at the last meeting, I moved to defer an item that was a rezoning to GB from gathering place. And at the time, my intent was to defer that rezoning because I hadn't even spoke to the developers to know what the plan was. So subsequently, I will tell you, and not to jump too far ahead, but I think it's appropriate for this conversation. I did meet with the developers, and to Councilman Wilson's point, you're exactly right. They're 110%, without question, building apartments. That's what they want to do. That site in particular, it's on the intersection, Clemens Ferry Road, where traffic is a nightmare, and they only have a right-in, right-out. and they could do 300-400 apartments. So, to Councilman Seeking's point, sometimes we have to tell property owners, you've got rights, and you can develop, and I told the property owners of this, if you have rights on the gathering place, and if you want to do a development, it's a mixed-use, work-live development, that might be right at that site. But 300-plus apartments is not. And so the only way that we can control what happens in some parts of the city and not create more problems that we know, in this particular one, flooding obviously is another. Sometimes we need to basically tell developers and property owners, you've got rights, you can build to those rights, and we encourage you to do so if you want to. However, if you want to do something different, you need to make sure that whatever you're going to do is an asset to the community, not a liability. And the one on Clemensbury Road would be a huge liability. So I only say that, and again, I'm skipping ahead on the agenda, but I think it all ties in together. As I said before, gathering place, the GB, the reality is it's a downzoning probably. It does eliminate that unlimited density. However, I can assure you, no developer is going to develop on the site with GB right now. They're not going to do it because they can't financially do it. I'm not saying we want to make these parcels, these large tracts of land across our city unvaluable to property owners, but until we get a good plan, and this is exactly what I told this property owner, until they get a good plan of dealing with infrastructure and traffic at the intersection, I would support making any change, and they heard me loud and clear, and we have an agreement. I think sometimes we have to be able to step back and before we rezone things, we need to make sure that we're not just sort of throwing things out there to let them happen. We do need to take some time to think through it. I don't know what the answer is. Well, it's a $44 million answer out here.
Yes, it is, yes.
$44 million question.
Right. Well, no, we already answered the question. We know what the answer is. We just don't have a way to pay for it. And so the reality is that until something happens that we figure that out, I do think we've got to stop and take a deep breath and figure out what we're going to do. Because if not, we're going to run into problems across the city.
So I would suggest as we deputize or ask Councilmember White to speak with those developers that before the next meeting, we ask Councilmember White assistance in this district to meet with developers and find out a little more about what they have in mind and have those transparent.
Just like what Gary explained, that's a right in, right out, coming off of West Ashley Circle. When you go back over to Glen McConnell, you're going to make a right turn and you're going back toward town. You're not going back toward Bees Ferry Road. To get in there, you got to go to Bees Ferry Road, make that left, to turn into West Ashley Circle, another left, and then you get to the property. I mean, it's...
All right, next is number 6, which I understand and also confirmed by Councilmember White has also been deferred, but since we have it posted for a public notice, we certainly are open for any public comment. So Mr. Morgan, if you'd present.
Yes, sir, and this is a 67-acre site at the intersection of Clements Ferry, which is running north-south, and 526. It consists of some highland and some marshland, and it is currently zoned gathering place.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none.
This too was deferred by the
It was deferred by the applicant, so there's no action needed, but if anybody would like to have a comment, certainly.
I'd just like to hear from Councilmember White.
Yeah. Well, in my discussion, again, with the developer, their intended purpose and use on the site is just inappropriate for the site. Based on the existing infrastructure that exists, this has got a right in, right out. They've already got a neighborhood that was actually under development before DOT changed that to a right in, right out. That's at Clements Ferry Road. If you put, 400 or 500 vehicle trips a day onto that intersection, all going right, the only way that they can turn around and get on 526 is go down Marina Drive and do a U-turn. It just can't happen. It's just absolutely impossible. And quite frankly, I'm not sure anybody would fund that project. So I had that discussion. The property owner had no answers to, and not that they haven't been trying, I should state that. They've been trying to figure it out, but they have no answers and it's not been figured out. And I told them, I think this is putting the cart before the horse. If they want to develop this site GB, they are fully entitled to do so and they can do it. I highly doubt they would. It's not economically feasible to do it, but at this time, trying to change this to GB without a solution for the infrastructure would be bad policy for this body, and so I simply told them I wouldn't support it. And that having been said, I know they've deferred. I don't know if this needs to be withdrawn or we need to go back to them and ask them to withdraw. I know we don't want to see these things constantly lingering on our agenda.
Well, they told the planning department they were deferring it. I don't know if they want it withdrawn.
Maybe we should. Ms. Morgan, maybe you can go back to them and just say that the understanding was that they were going to withdraw.
Okay.
Maybe they should have said they want to withdraw.
Okay, because that was not relayed to us. It was just defer and work on traffic solutions. But,
I think the reality is that traffic solution is going to be a significant time coming. I just don't, that's a road widening project that took them, gazillion years to even get off the ground without getting that widened. We don't really know what the traffic impacts are going to be on that site until that road widening project is complete, and they still got a significant number of traffic, at least a year plus before that's all completed, at least for phase one. So that's why I say this is something that I don't think is going to get solved in 60 days.
All right. So I think we can just move on to our next item, number 7, which is an annexation.
Yes, sir. Just a single-family annexation in West Ashley at 1849 Westfield Road. It's a recommendation for SR1. It was R4 in Charleston County.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? If not, it goes to council. Motion to approve this annexation and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And finally, number 8, Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This, of course, is the matter of the supermajority vote from Planning Commission. This comes to you with a recommendation of disapproval from the Planning Commission, and just as always, staff have no position. Staff have no position. We have never given a recommendation on this matter.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Evening, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
City Council, Mohammed Idris. You know, this is a great month, December, the month that Christ is said to be born. And what I'm hearing from you all with these prices on these property is what, like Mother Mary when she went to the hotel in the inn, there was no place in for the poor. Y'all are running the poor people off of the planet, and nobody does this kind of thing other than a devil. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Christopher King with the Preservation Society of Charleston. I've sort of lost track of the number of times I think we've spoken to you all about this issue, so it's come as no surprise that we're opposed to this ordinance amendment. The Planning Commission resoundingly said no to this, and we'd ask that you please do the same. Thank you.
All right. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? If not, it goes to council. Councilmember Waring.
I spoke to several members of the Planning Commission after this, and I was told by several of them that they wanted to amend it to 60% and was told that it could not be, I think the request was for 65% override, or 50% override, I forget now. What was the original request? 50. A simple majority. A simple majority. They wanted to move it to 60%, and they were told that they could not do it. So, I'm going to make a motion that we send it back to the Planning Commission requiring a 60% override. And hopefully I'll get a motion on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the record, staff did not consult them that they could not make a motion about a 60% or otherwise. I just want to state that clearly for the record. There was a lot of discussion at Planning Commission back and forth about what the different positions are, but I just want to be clear about that. That didn't come from us about their ability to make a motion or not.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. My understanding also was that they were told that they had to take the ordinance or the bill, whatever, that we presented, and they were not allowed to adjust it.
That's not correct.
That was not what they were told, or is that not correct?
They were not told that. And of course, Planning Commission, they have some latitude to do exactly that. They can take it up, they can amend it, and they can send back to you something different.
That information. Thank you.
I believe you, I believe you. But I'm telling you, I had several of them tell me that, separate from one another. So to bring clarity to, because this issue is not going to go away, okay? I can get in my stump speech about how unfair 75% of an elected body has to be present to override a simple majority from an appointed body that we appoint. But that said, I am asking that we send it back with a 60% override requirement.
Second.
Saying people.
Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
No.
Well, now let's hold up your hand, please.
Yes, Paul.
So I have Tecklenburg, Seeking, Shade, and Williams. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think, since
Their motion back to us was for disapproval. Do we need a majority to modify this and send it back to them, council, may I ask, or do we need a supermajority?
Supermajority.
No, we don't.
If we're acting on this one, you do.
I would just like to ask our attorney's opinion.
All right, so the motion is to probably not take any action on the 50% requirement and to send a different ordinance back for their consideration anew.
Yes.
And I think sending something to, you can either take up the 50% and it goes one way or the other, or you can send something back to the Planning Commission. Sending something back is going to take a majority.
Right, okay. So the motion passes, and we'll send it back to them.
Well, I just
Councilmember
want to make
Seek.
sure, have we voted on this or not? On this particular amendment, which was taken up by the Planning Commission, don't we have to vote on this?
I think you can defer it.
Well, okay, we haven't done that yet.
We have not
We've just
deferred it.
ignored it so far.
Okay.
Move for deferral.
Francis, I really have a question.
Councilmember Lewis.
Yeah, we've been dealing with this thing so long. We know that we got some ordinances that's on the books that's been here 100 years, and it's probably one of them. I think we need to do something, look at some of these ordinances and these laws we got on the books. Like I said, we need to update our rules of council. I think this council and some of your workshops, we just need to sit down and think about some things that we need to look at and what we could do according to state law and what we could do according to council and the rules of council. Because if we don't, we'll be back and forth doing this thing here next 2 or 3 years. So I think we need to update some things, and we really need to take a look at it. Because this stuff here right now, it's just a bunch of childish stuff. You've been going through this stuff for so long, it's just ridiculous. It really is.
Mayor, okay, it's Councilmember Mitchell, looks like he wants, are you?
Yeah. Yes, the thing I don't understand, I never did understand, maybe Francis can tell me, we can go back, understood that you have an elected official here, and you got appointed position officers that come and can dictate to the elected officials, because they can override us all the time. I don't know how that could be done. I don't know what kind of rule that we put in place during that time. I don't understand it. I never could understood that, even from different aspect or different organization I've been involved in. I never see that the people that we appoint to be on a committee have more power than we have, if you're looking at it. And we are the elected official body, but they can come and tell us, we'll send things back to them. We don't want it. They send it back to the council. We don't want to take this, and the council send it back to them. They send it back to us. It's a back and forth thing, but I don't understand how that can happen that way. I just don't understand it. I just, maybe, Francis, you could explain it to me, but I have never understood that yet, how they have that much power than we have. Once we make an ordinance, or we send it to them, and they're going to override us back and send it back.
Councilmember Mitchell, some city council, at some point in time, passed the ordinance that's on the books now that says when the planning commission has a negative recommendation, it takes 3/4 of the vote of the entire body to override it. So that ordinance has been on the books. I don't know which council it came in under, and we find ourselves in the position where the planning commission disagrees that it should be changed, and it's going to, until they come up with something that they agree to, theoretically, it's going to take 10 votes to overturn it.
Okay, what I'm saying is the council did it. The council gave them that authority, if you may.
Because what the ordinance says is that any amendment, change, or supplement to the zoning regulations, which this is, requires 3/4 vote of this body when the planning commission has a negative recommendation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but the council is the one gave them that, made that.
That's correct.
So then, to me, if the council did it, then it seems the council can take it back. This is, what I'm saying is.
Well, you still have to get their recommendation.
That's what I don't understand. That's part of the recommendation.
Because any zoning amendment requires a recommendation from the planning commission.
You're trying to tell me that this city council cannot amend an ordinance that a city council in the past had passed? Whether it be 10,
no, sir,
20, 30, 40, 50 years?
You can amend an ordinance, Councilmember Lewis, but when in zoning law, by state law, amendments to zoning ordinances, which this would be, all amendments are referred to the city council, to the planning commission for a recommendation to city council. So if you wanted to change the requirements for GB, you would have to send that ordinance to the planning commission. They would give you their recommendation, and then y'all vote on it. This ordinance about the supermajority being required when there's a negative recommendation falls into that same category. It is an amendment to the zoning ordinance. So, and only zoning ordinances have to go to the planning commission, not just other ordinances.
Well, this came on the home rule?
Yes, sir. It's under the State Enabling Act. It is, the Zoning Enabling Act.
Please get me a copy of it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And anybody else probably that want one. We need it.
Councilmember Waring, before you start, please say that the clerk has informed me that your original motion was in fact to defer and send it back to the witnesses on the commission. They can cover it as far as our action tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually want to follow up on what Councilman Lewis was speaking to our good counsel about. Can we get the original ordinance that was voted on back in the 1930s? Because I'm still to the point to where, and even get an Attorney General's opinion on that. And the reason I say that is because I agree, obviously, that an elected body, when you looked at the beach company, the order from the beach company, it said that city council is the final arbiter on zoning issues, okay? That 75% requirement is certainly a difficult hurdle. I call the municipal association, it's nowhere else in the state of South Carolina is present, and I asked them to see if they can find where it was anywhere else in the nation. I'd like to see when the original council voted on it, how did they ask a planning commission their permission, especially if they were setting up the planning commission?
Well, I don't know when it was passed, and so we'll try to find the original when it first came into the code, and try to find as much minutes around that as we can. But I think what you're going to have to remember is that if it was done as long ago as I think it was, that state law was different then too. So, we
Well,
might not
let me
be
say
operating
this.
under the same.
I mean, I want everybody to know this. This isn't going to go away. So eventually, if it goes to court, then council will have to vote whether we answer the lawsuit. Now, how's that vote going to go, gentlemen and lady? How's that vote going to go? And Councilmember Lewis is correct. It has been a game going back and forth. It's a tug of war of preferences. And the fact is, it happens nowhere else in America. And of course, we say, well, we're Charleston, we're different. But there are a lot of things that were different in Charleston that were incorrect. And we know which one of them I can call out first and foremost. But a 75% rule, where that doesn't even present itself anywhere else in the nation, to be stubborn, if it goes to court, eventually, City Council will have to answer that lawsuit. We've actually gone to the point to where a planning commission came up with their own ordinance and voted on it and sent it to us. That was on the beach, on the Sergeant Jasper. I've never seen that before in my life.
Well,
How can you come up with your own measure and vote on your own measure and not have a conflict?
Well, because the zoning ordinance, which some city council passed, allows the planning commission to make recommendations to amend the ordinance. They have that authority. The staff often brings recommendations to the planning commission on behalf of applicants or on behalf of this council when y'all direct them to do something. But again, that is a power that was lodged in the planning commission many years ago, that they have the authority to make recommendations.
Well, we need to review that. Excuse me. One reason we need to review that aspect is because when they did that ordinance, we had to come up with a supermajority to override that.
I recall that.
You remember that?
Yes, sir.
And if we didn't come up with the supermajority, and for all the people in present, that supermajority is 75% of 13 people, the mayor and 12 council members. We can pass this budget with a quorum. A quorum of council is 7. We had 7 people present. We're getting ready to vote on a $211 million budget tonight. If there were 7 people present here today, 4 people could pass the budget for the entire city. But to override the planning commission, it requires 10 out of 13 people voting, or whether they're here or not. Okay? Whether they're here or not. There's not another piece of business that we conduct in the entire city of Charleston that has that bar.
All right, well, if I may move us along, I would predict that we're going to have the opportunity to talk about this matter again. The motion passed, it was deferred and sent back to the Planning Commission with a 60% request. And thanks. Yes, we did vote. We voted on the deferral? Yes. There were 4 opposed, and the motion was called to just require a majority, so the motion passed.
It's just that initially we were saying.
Right. Okay, so we deferred the existing motion and made it 60%. All right, so next matter to come before City Council will be the approval of our minutes from November 28th. We have a motion to approve in a second. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. We're going to defer the December 11th meeting minutes, rather. And next is our citizens' participation period. And we have about 10 folks here, so we'll keep your remarks to 3 minutes. And Madam Clerk will call the names of those who have signed up.
First, we have Muhammad Idris.
Again.
We have Beatrice Burney. Okay, followed by Christopher King.
Mr. Idris.
Evening. You know, Moses staff turned into snakes. And I see this being happening here with the staff of the city. The staff have turned into a bunch of snakes, and the staff is controlling the people that we vote for. So we need to take these things to the community. That's a shame before God. They don't supposed to have no power over the council. Evening. Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, not Charleston. And it is the #1 city in America, and it is the holy city. Regardless of how many tourists come to Charleston, and no matter how much money they spend, Charleston will never be the #1 city. Charleston is a city that is ran by crooked Jews, or I should say, the crooks among the Jews. And Philadelphia is the city that the Holy Bible sent a message to about the Jews being the devil. You have the verses in front of you. It is no accident that the founding father chose Philadelphia to construct the Constitution. Also, it was no accident that it was presented on 4th of July. They were telling the Jews that you are a liar when you say that you are the only chosen people of God. The Constitution said that we all are created equal. The numbers of letters in Philadelphia are 12, and 12 represent leadership. The numbers of letters in Charleston are 10, and 10 represent consciousness. Why am I bringing this up? It is because Philadelphia is the leader, and the crooks among the Jews in Charleston and around the world knows this to be a fact. Just like the Middle East, Mecca is the #1 city, not Jerusalem.
Point of order. Mr. Idris, could I ask you to pause for just a minute? Yes, sir, Mr. Moody.
Robert Rules of Order require that we not have this type of language, and I think we ought to rule it out of order.
Mr. Idris, could I ask you to please refrain from vilifying or making negative remarks about folks of other faiths? I would really appreciate it.
Inflammatory language would be another
Respect the staff.
Inflammatory language.
Please proceed, Mr. Idris.
Inflammatory. Councilman Moody, I had a poster board in here, and he called the policeman to tell me, pardon me. Yes, sir, but I'm saying he addressed me, and he broke the law. He broke the law. I had a poster, and he asked the police officer to put me out of here.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of law is that? What kind of man is he? He's like his name, Moody. Just like the Middle East, Mecca is the #1 city, not Jerusalem, and Jerusalem will never be the #1 city. And the crooks among the Jews, you can read about black and white people all day long doing wrong, and about the Baptist preacher, and about the Pope, and about the cardinals, and the Islamic imams, the terrorists, the Buddhist priests. But hand off the crooked Jews. Well, I'm saying that the crooks among the Jews can go to hell.
Mr. Idris, I'm glad you're finished. Who's next?
Hello, Patrice Bernier, Savage Street, and Groundswell. So, Mr. Mayor and council members, as a member of Groundswell, with over 300 members of our household, our cause and membership has one common denominator that unites us: water. There is no geographical partisanship when it comes to water and flood hazard. We ask you to prioritize all resources and available funding to fix flooding in our city. While we are grateful for the added wastewater fee for drainage fixes, overall we feel the current city budget and council actions do not reflect flood mitigation as a priority. The shovel-ready and soon-ready projects, including Church Creek Basin, Seawall, and Calhoun West projects, need to start as quickly as possible. We need starting dates in 2018. Please reallocate the funds that were appropriated by Wayne Means and City Council meeting to the seawall, but taken away for beautification and other projects. There will be no beauty if it's underwater. As you know, inadequate funding for flood mitigation actions and prevention will cause higher flood insurance premium to all properties in the city, will decrease the quality of life and the value of properties for residents living in neighborhoods prone to flooding, and even risk endangering the life of citizens most exposed to flood-related disaster. Please do what's right for every citizen of Charleston, no matter which neighborhood of the city they live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Christopher King, followed by Scott Anthony, and then Carol Jackson.
Great. Mr. Mayor, members of council, just a few quick comments. Would like to second the comments made by Ms. Bernier of Groundswell. We very much appreciate the efforts that y'all have made to allocate additional resources to flooding this year, and appreciate the incredible challenge of squeezing any additional funding out of what is obviously a very tight budget. And we just encourage you that you continue to have flooding as a critical priority for you moving forward. Also want to speak very quickly to the reappropriation of the hospitality tax surplus. We're just concerned that allocating some of these funds for non-tourism related items is problematic from a precedent perspective, and we'd ask that you maybe consider potentially allocating these for the main issues that we hear about, which are flooding and short-term rentals. Lastly, just want to comment on something that's been in the news this week with the Ashley River Historic District. The preservation community is incredibly concerned about what is happening or what could potentially happen, understanding that any inappropriate development, or any development, quite honestly, in that region is going to have impacts on flooding, on traffic, on transportation. And we would just strongly to urge you to consider doing any and all that you can to protect what is one of the most important and fragile historic districts in the city of Charleston. And we would just ask that y'all please be vigilant in the protection of that part of our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Scott Anthony, 6 Ambrose Alley. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to declare my support for the efforts of Groundswell, but I'm here today as an individual. There's no denying the council has a difficult task. Controversies abound. Sergeant Jasper, cruise ships 526, the list is endless. Just mentioning these issues stirs an emotional response from pretty much every resident in the city. And for good reason. We love our city and we want it to prosper. Unfortunately, these issues often pit district against district, business against resident, tourist against local. But there's one issue that we must all agree to prioritize over any other, and that's flooding. Flooding is an existential threat to this city. If we do not fix flooding, none of the other issues will matter, regardless of district. Every decision the council makes moving forward must address the impact of flooding above all other considerations. Flooding is a complex issue and there's no simple solution. The city will need help. It must make a concerted effort to lobby state, federal, and private support to assist with the costs and expertise. That said, the city must use the resources available to do everything possible to immediately prioritize flood-related problems. Make no mistake, this is not an impossible task. Charleston became the gold standard for historical preservation because the citizens mobilized to preserve the city. Let's become the gold standard on flood mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carol Jackson.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Carol Jackson, Patterson Avenue, 29412. Good evening. I would like to say my personal and public thank yous to council members Regal, Williams, and Wilson for their many years of dedicated and excellent service to our city. I certainly can't speak for my freshman colleagues, but I believe they would join me to agree we each respect and appreciate the very big shoes we will try our best to fill in the years ahead. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Frederick Scott Stingle. Frederick, okay. Followed by...
I'm here on 251 Louise P. Gardner Street. November 28th, the Ways and Means Committee heard a first reading on this for annexation. There have been no other readings on this property for annexation since then. It's been up for second reading 2 times and has been deferred both times. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock, he has managed to get before the Planning Commission for a zoning variance. He is not even in the city of Charleston, and I would like to know, how is it possible that somebody that's not in the city of Charleston can get a zoning variance to have 3 units in the county when he's been told by the county that he can't do this? This is improper regulations. I have fought him for the last year on the county level. This property owner, Chris DiMattia, has used every trick in the book to connive his way as far as he has now. When it gets to the Planning Commission tomorrow, I ask for the Planning Commission to defer it, let him make up his mind, does he want to be in the city or not? Not to use city council to try and get a zoning regulation so he can have another apartment in our neighborhood. We are R4. Everybody in my neighborhood is R4. It's been that way for years. I've spoken to 80% of the property owners. They want to keep it R4. They do not want this development to happen in our neighborhood. Thank you very much. I made comments last week at the 20-minute mark on YouTube if you'd like to see further arguments on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we had Angela Drake. I believe Angela is gone. Okay. And finally, Veronica Gooding? Goodridge? Okay. Goodrich.
Gentlemen, I'm Veronica Goodrich. I live at 11 Rutledge Boulevard, which is a couple blocks off of Murray. And I'm also a member of Groundswell. 3 years ago, when we had our 1,000-year flood, we were all affected by this water that continued to stay in our neighborhood for quite some time, for about 11 hours or more. And we were told at that time that the cause was a barnacled-covered flow valve, which Councilman White is looking at right now. That valve was removed right then and there. It was not functional. And 3 years ago, we were told that it was going to be removed and and a new ones were going to be in its place. And just today, I'm walking through on the seawall, taking my dog for a walk. I looked down at low tide, and this is 3 years later, and I noticed there's no valve there at all. I was under the impression that there was going to be a replacement, and I was hoping that any of the future plumbing resolves would be published or made aware so that we know that some action is happening. As I said, I'm sure there is something going on, but it was a bit disheartening when I assumed it was already 3 years later taken care of. So this is, again, just a small concern of a neighborhood that's inundated with flooding and flooding problems. And we see certain works happening, pipes going in here and pipes going in there, but there's just not a consistent calendar or an understanding of when these things are going to be put in place. So I'm a concerned citizen, an invested citizen, 2 properties, and affected by on both accounts. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, just because this is on TV and I got to respond to that.
Yes, Councilmember C.
The valve was removed and it was replaced. It's actually inland. It's underneath a very large manhole. If you want us to open it up, we can show it to you. Mr. Newham is here, who oversaw that project. So that valve was changed at great expense to the city very swiftly and is fully functioning. So not only that valve, there was another valve down the road at Limehouse that was replaced, and we've just done Ashley. So there's lots going on, and I wish you would have called me about that rather than come and said something about it, because it was done very swiftly and it is working. So, thank you.
That particular valve is working quite well. And gave Mr. Newham a new nickname, in fact, when I met with him recently. He's Mr. Check Valve now. He's going through an incredible effort to test various locations throughout the city, not just outfalls, but even within our city where we have intrusion of tidal water, to see where check valves can be successfully deployed. And he has a schedule of places that he's checking and a schedule of new valves that have been ordered and are going to be put into place. So we're actually making some good progress with check valves right now. Okay, so moving forward to
Mr. Mayor?
Petitions and communications. Yes, sir, Mr. Ware.
I appreciate you recognizing me. Several minutes ago, Mr. Muhammad, who we all know, spoke very harshly about our staff. And everybody in here knew that that was incorrect. We have freedom of speech, and you certainly have the right to say that, Mr. Mohammed, but we have a wonderful staff, and I'm sure the mayor and every council member around here knows that. They go above and beyond. They are overworked, and they're underpaid. And that's a fact. If somebody came in here and spoke about African Americans the way you spoke about the Jewish folk and their religion, you would be upset, and so would I. If somebody spoke about those in the Muslim faith that way, I would be upset, and so would you. This inflammatory and humiliating language, to me, is tantamount to yelling fire in a movie theater. And we all know that's against the law. We protect your right to speak, but to say it in the manner in which you delivered it today, we have to find a way to curtail it. And we can pull up our ordinance on that to find a way to do that. You graciously, Mr. Mayor, gave him 3 minutes. But to be able to take a verbal beating on any community like that, in my opinion, shouldn't be tolerated. You can certainly deliver your disagreements with various communities and various religions without being inflammatory and humiliating, and that's what you were today. Take what you said and apply it to African Americans and see how proud you would feel if somebody spoke about us that way. It's wrong, and somebody need to call it out, and obviously, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you can speak to it yourself, but I didn't think we should just go on as business as usual, because that's wrong.
Thank you, Councilmember Waring, for speaking out, and I think that we sat here and we hear this type of language, and it's upsetting to all of us. And Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that we review the parameters of the citizens' participation period, make it a uniform system, make all participants to a minute, regardless if it's one person who signed up or 100 people who signed up, that it's no more than a minute, and that we put in place certain rules and regulations of what can be said and cannot be said in these meetings. I mean, we have a right to free speech, but free speech is not an unbridled right to free speech. And derogatory comments like that just do not have place in this chamber. Citizens have a right to complain about us, complain about our system of government, to compliment our system of government, but that kind of language is just over the top. And we've got to address it. And I think that coming in with the new year, here's an opportunity for us to do that. And I would recommend that you either appoint a committee or look at our ordinance to how we control this type of comments. It's got to stop. I think we're tired of it, quite frankly.
To comments that have been made, and I just let them go over my back sometimes. But I'll share with you just Sunday evening here in the city of Charleston. We had the 11th annual Hanukkah in the square, and it was a beautiful service commemorating our religious freedom and the joint heritage that we have as Jews and Christians and Muslims in this city of being able to freely worship and respect one another. And I will be more vigilant in my gavel moving forward. But this kind of language is not representative of this city, and I'll do a better job. Councilmember Moody.
That was exactly my point in raising a point of order.
Yes, sir.
We already have in place Robert Rules of Order. That's what we adhere to. And all of those remarks, all of us are responsible when we hear them or say them, that we're called to task or called to account for our speech. Shouldn't be making personal remarks, insulting language, vulgarity, or attacks. inflammatory language, speaking about another's motives, criticizing past actions, and remarks that are not germane to the or relevant to what we're discussing. All of those are under Robert's Rules of Order are prohibited. And it's all of our responsibility, not just yours. And that's why I raised that issue. I thought he was out of order without attacking anybody or saying anything, and you handled it exactly right. So that's what we need to do as a council. We need to police ourselves and act responsibly. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And maybe I've erred on the side of the First Amendment, but I hear, I'm with you. Yes, sir, Councilmember
I
Lewis.
certainly agree too, Mr. Mayor. We all have a constitutional right of freedom of speech.
Yes, sir.
But I think the rules, I think the citizen participation period is set up for citizens to come and address council, particularly on matters that they see pertaining to the city and where we have made a mistake, or either where we can do better to make the city a better city, but not degrading each other. And that's not what it's about. It's about trying to get a point over to help the city to be a better city, and letting city council know whether we are doing things that they think that are right. If they don't think there's something right, address us to it, but not belittle no one. And we have allowed this to happen at least 22 years I've been here. You know, and I know sometimes I walk out this city council some years back with tears in my eyes of where we've been accused. But I think that we need to kind of put our feet down a little more. I agree. Thank you.
Any further comment? We'll move on now to petitions and communications. Now, I note that your agenda has an amendment on it, so I would respectfully ask for council's approval to add not only an item under petition and communications regarding taking action to close a portion of Shepherd Street, but also for later in the meeting tonight to add an item at the end of the agenda pertaining to the receipt of an annexation report.
Move for that too.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we have amended the agenda, but we will start with our petitions and communications with an update on the low battery design. Right, Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as I'm waiting on my presentation to come up, I will say that, first of all, this is a project that has been a collaboration among many city departments. Fundamentally, this is a public services project. Most recently, it's been looked at by a collaborative team, including folks from public services. Thank you. Traffic and transportation.
Right in the microphone. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, all right, got that cleared up. A lot of folks have worked on this, traffic and transportation, parks, and this comes to you most recently from my department. Alan Davis and the design division in my department have done a phenomenal job leading the most recent studies of the design of the low battery seawall repair and improvements. Just have a few slides to show you. This was built in the 19-teens. The wall itself, as well as the sidewalk and good portions of the road, are structurally deficient. They need to be replaced. Their time has come. And we began our collaborative project after looking at our former proposal for how to rebuild it, which included taking the railing of the wall itself. I don't know if you all can see this laser or not. Where the railing is right now, you know, that's open. And the proposal was to fill it in, which would give us about 2.5 feet of storm surge protection, higher than what we have now. And after a really collaborative project, including a lot of public outreach and online survey, we set up, we went out to people at low battery. Alan set up at the farmers markets. We really engaged a lot of folks and got a lot of input. After studying this, we really felt like the preferred design is actually not just to fill in the seawall itself, giving you about 2.5 feet, but as we're going to have to rebuild the sidewalk anyway, to elevate the platform of the sidewalk up by about 2.5 feet. And then you would have potentially another 2.5 feet of seawall protection in the railing itself if you filled it in, either temporarily during a storm event, or you could come back in and fill it in entirely later on down the road if we get a lot of sea level rise. And this would be about the equivalent height to the present day high battery. And potentially, something like that could look like this, which is, again, equivalent to the design of the high battery in terms of its height, but it could get us up to 5 feet of future storm surge protection, which we think is a prudent investment of our money. And in terms of our next steps, I don't know why this slide is off center. We've completed this sort of collaborative design study and outreach period. And our next steps are engineering, bidding, and the first phase construction of the repair and improvements. And so with that, I'll open it for questions.
Councilmember Wilson and then Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. I know this is not a subject for a lot of discussion tonight. This was just a presentation, and certainly it's not going to be voted upon, because I'm actually the one who asked for this. And what I had been getting at was this as opposed to the entire White Point Gardens plan. And I realize there have been several formats for that. I won't have a chance to vote on this, so I do want to make my opinion as a council member and as a citizen known to this body. And that is absolutely keep vehicular access to White Point Gardens. There has been some talk of blocking it off and having it nothing but pedestrian and bike oriented. I think that would be a terrible mistake. I would like very much to see the parking retained. It will probably go to metered parking. And again, I understand that. Perhaps you take the proceeds of that and apply it towards some of the repair costs. But I would like to see parking retained, because otherwise it's just going to dump into the surrounding neighborhoods and make things rather unbearable for those citizens. And keep it open to the public. As somebody who is a resident of the city but does not live on the peninsula, I relish the opportunity to go downtown and park somewhere along that seawall and take a walk. Perhaps my husband and I, we walk up to the waterfront park, we walk to the Battery or the market, and then walk the whole way around back down Meeting Street. Takes a couple of hours, but it's a really thoroughly enjoyable activity for a city resident but not a peninsular resident. So I would ask you all, as this comes for public discussion, A, let's find a place for restrooms down there, and B, please do not close it off in any way, shape, or form. Keep it open and keep the parking so that those of us who don't live on the peninsula still have access to our portion of the city. Thank you.
Any other discussion or question? Oh, Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson, for those comments. I think we'll take those to heart. My question was, as they designed this low battery, as we call the low battery, do you have any reason or information as to why they did not elevate it initially to the same height of what we call the high battery?
I didn't do the historical research on this part, but I'll speculate after having looked at this for a few months now. The high battery itself, where you make the turn and it becomes East Bay Street, is what receives the stronger wave action and most of the energy that comes off the harbor. When you turn low battery, of course, you get less direct wave action off the harbor. So it makes sense logically that is a lower seawall. And it's also worth noting that the elevation of the seawall was actually set many years prior to the point that most of Murray Boulevard was built. That the low battery at White Point Garden existed many, many, many years before. And so when Murray Boulevard was built, it connected into that existing elevation, which had existed, for many years previously. So it was a different era. And of course, we have increasing storm events these days, and we want to make sure we're prepared.
Because that part of the city existed. I mean, those homes on the high battery area further down East Bay Street existed. But this was all filled in land.
That's correct. The majority of the area that currently is Murray Boulevard and about 2 blocks back from that was all built and really opened in 1922. So that neighborhood is fundamentally a modern addition to the city.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Waring.
I agree with Council Lady Wilson, but what I do think we should come to is a vote eventually, whether it's a month from now when new colleagues come to council so they can get up to speed. We've got several options out there, and I think we need to put them on the agenda, whether it's 30 days. And I know you have some public hearings, certainly down in Councilmember Seeking's district. I attended one and was very interested in the citizens' feedback. it wasn't in unison on whether you take away the parking or not. I found that very interesting, how some of the people that live there were encouraging keeping the on-street parking. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't be putting energy into three options. We should get a consensus around one option and build it. I agree, Councilmember Seekings. But one big thing that I believe we can work through, may be a tug of war, but putting bathrooms down at the Battery is, that's the option that I'm gonna vote for when I vote the constituents I represent for their tax dollars, putting all the tax dollars down there. There's never been a request out of I think it's in the paper recently that it's $20 million now, or $22 million that we have with this 5.875 that hopefully we'll vote on tonight. Those votes were unanimous, okay? Councilman Seekings is a very, very good councilman for his district down there. I've maintained that out for a number of years. But he's gotten those unanimous votes because we actually agree that the battery wall, the high battery should have been raised, and we certainly agree that the repairs needed to be done to low battery. What we have not had a chance to get a consensus around is, do we expand the green space as proposed? Do we keep the parking or take away the parking? Do we meter the parking to contribute towards the cost or not? And of course, the subject about putting restrooms down there has always been taboo, and I think we need to call it out, put it on the agenda, vote it, have the public input. Now, when we have public hearings on whether we put restrooms at the Battery or not, it should not just be held on the peninsula. We need to have public hearings on James Island, Johns Island, certainly west of Ashley, and Daniel Island, and get input from all of the citizens of Charleston, because all the citizens are going to pay for it. So my request is that the options that we have for the Battery, hopefully within 30 days, no more than 6 weeks, the first meeting in February, we'd have had the opportunity to have these public hearings and put the choices on the agenda, and let's vote it up or down and get a strategy to move forward with, as opposed to, do we spend 40 or 50 million expanding the green space? Because this $100 million, that $100 million includes, from all of I've been told, includes the green space. And that's giving a false signal to many in the city of Charleston, to many of the residents in the city of Charleston, especially when we have 44, I thought it was 47 million for the Church Creek drainage basin. Fix the wall, but the green space, certainly those dollars can go to fix a pretty strong flooding problem in the Church Creek basin. So.
Well, let me just share that I don't think there's any question that we decided upon the option that would elevate the wall. And so from what I've seen, the differential in spending from whether after you lift it you have this much green space or a little bit more, the delta in the money is not that big. Most of the money's in elevating the wall and reinforcing the wall and building the wall. It's more the structural, building that's going to cost the bulk of the money. And also, just for everyone's benefit, we are already at a point with that decision that our engineering firm is proceeding with their engineering design. So we're not wasting any time right now in order to decide about the parking or the traffic flow. We're proceeding as quickly as we can with the project, and I just wanted to share that with you. And I think we're close to, if not at the point where we could share the preferred design out of the four that the public has reviewed already. And I don't mind if you want to do it now. But,
yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, this is our staff's recommended design, and we did look at the idea of eliminating the roadway that is between White Point Garden and the battery, and we're not recommending that. We took that option off the table. It's kind of cool from a design standpoint. I kind of like it, but we're not recommending that because it doesn't work. It eliminates vehicular movement through there and it takes parking out. So that's not our recommendation. So we're recommending to elevate the wall itself, give us additional flood protection, make sure that the money that we spend is a good long-term investment.
Councilmember Gregory.
This image, however, excludes parking.
Good point. So look, this design, in order to get the sidewalk up on the water side, if you have a wall there and you park a car next to it, your door is going to open right into the wall. So what this does is that along the segment of Murray Boulevard, today we have all the parking on the water side is bumper to bumper the whole way. The land side has very few vehicles because it's been marked for resident-only parking. And what this design would do is eliminate some, maybe not all, of the parking on the water side. That means that we would have a more efficient use of all the parking on the street, because today it's only about 50% parked. Does that make sense? It's only parked on the south side, it's not really parked on the north side. So the result here is that if we take some of this parking away, we end up with the same parking configuration that we have, it's just flip-flopped. And then the other thing that I would point out is that, we looked a lot at who parks on the water side of this. You have a lot of folks who are students at the College of Charleston. You have a lot of folks who are working at the food and beverage industries. And we have a separate ongoing effort to make sure that we take care of the needs of those people, that we're going to work with the food and beverage community to get park and ride locations established. We want to support them. And the same goes for the College of Charleston. We want to make sure that we have their parking needs met. So we're going to look at that as we move forward. This does change the parking configuration on the southern side.
Right, but, and as a follow-up.
Of course.
What is the net loss of parking spaces? You said there will be a reduction.
Good question. We haven't counted every single one, but the idea is that if you look at the total utilization of the space, how many cars are parked there today, it should be the same after this conversion. So there shouldn't be any difference in the total utilization of parking there. Does that make sense?
Councilmember White, and then Seeking.
So are you saying that the offset for the parking would be that parking which today is resident only would be converted to just simply open parking with not being resident only parking?
Good question. So we looked at that. We don't have, by the way, I want to make sure, this is a concept y'all can see from this sketch. It's not a final design by any means. That's got to be looked at. Our proposal would be to take the northern side and make it a mix. Some resident parking, maybe some metered parking, maybe some free parking. Somebody wants to come down there, they want to go fishing, they want to go take a walk, they should be able to do so for free for some period of time. Maybe the spaces that are in demand have a metered spot on them. It should be a mixture, and it should be done in a way that, again, we don't want to exclude anybody from this part of the city. If they want to drive in here, they should be able to do that just like they do today. But the way it is now, the park is not efficiently used. About half the street has no cars parked on it.
I think directionally, I would just, the comments that I've heard, as I've shared with folks, that there's an intent to do some changes. Overwhelmingly, everybody I talked to said they really don't care what you do with the wall, but don't take away the concrete. 100%, every person has made that comment to me. So, and it's really the same thing Councilor Wilson said, that a lot of people who drive in to the peninsula, it's not just tourists, it's not just people parking there during the day and going to work. There's a lot of people who come down and they do fish down there, and come down and walk and use that as an opportunity to be able to engage in that part of the city. And I would say if the alternative, the Lucy parking on that side of the road, is being offset by resident parking, I would say that too is a bad choice, because residents that live downtown already are struggling and challenged with off-street parking, because many homes don't even have off-street parking. And so by eliminating some of that just to offset parking on this side of the road, I would say too, directionally, we probably need to find a better solution. Because I think by doing that, we're going to hurt both groups, residents and non-residents of the municipality.
You want to weigh in?
Well, sure. I didn't know we were going to have a full debate about it. I mean, I'm happy to weigh in on it. I think it'd be better when we actually have a design that Jacobs puts forward. But this is a in its first instance, a repair project for a wall that is not failing, it has failed. We must do this project. I don't think anyone around this table knows that we don't have to do it, and we have to do it quickly. And I think that's the first and foremost thing that's important. When it comes to the land side, as you know, we've had lots of these public charrettes. There's been a lot of input. I do think traffic flow, Councilmember Wilson, around the park has been the preferred option. And there's been a lot of talk about what you do as you go down towards the Coast Guard. Just so you all know, from the point to the Coast Guard is 0.8 miles, exactly 0.8 miles. And currently today, between the point and the Coast Guard station, there are 214 parking spaces, 214. Every single one of which is free in perpetuity. So we have a lot of parking squatters, which, by the way, the net result of that is people who are looking for access who come from not miles and miles away, but just a few miles away. Johns Island, James Island, Daniel Island, to come along the Battery, to walk, to fish, to do this. You don't have access to it. There is currently a number of cars that park there for weeks at a time. So that is going to be, I'm hoping, part of the design thought process as we come out on the other side, is not just the manner in which parking is delineated and denominated, but the manner in which it is managed. Because right now it is completely unmanaged on the south side of Murray Boulevard, to the point where during Irma, we had to move cars. We couldn't find the owners. They were states and states and states away. So it is just so everyone around this table knows, because this is my district and I live around the corner and spend a lot of time thinking about it, the parking aspect is a huge issue, for sure. And right now, there is truly no public access parking for people who are there for a short to medium period of time. If you go down there during the time that the college is in session, all of those parking spaces are full 24/7. Now, when the college goes out of session, there is parking down there. But it is essentially an overflow parking lot for the college with some food and beverage people in there, and then some people who work along Broad Street, if they're lucky enough to get there in time to park. So the design, the other thing and the other reality of this project is, even though it's a waterborne project, it is going to take a lot of landside management and access. So for a good hunk of time, the parking is going to go away because of construction, not because of design. So that will also give us time to think about traffic and parking patterns as we go forward, and where the cars are and need to go, keeping residents in mind, keeping the fact that this is going to be now a beautiful 0.8 of a mile linear park, which people need to come and enjoy and be able to spend time there, but not be excluded, because it is literally right now, the people who park there are squatters. They're squatters. They're just parking there for free, forever. And it's just not a long-term sustainable project or model. If you go down there, you'll see there is absolutely no, there's not a meter, there's not a sign, there's nothing. It's one of the few places in all of the peninsula of the city you can park for free forever. And that is government subsidized parking for, among other things, the college, and that just doesn't work. So I think that you'll be satisfied when you see what Jacob and everybody's doing when they come to us sooner rather than later, right, and show us what the long-term plan is, that there will be access, and the access will be for the public, which is what needs to happen. Pardon me? Right. Well, I mean, right now, there is no real public parking there. So it's only going to increase it, not decrease it.
Councilmember Moody, did you have your hand up a minute ago?
I was just, I was getting late. I'll let this.
You'll defer. Okay. Okay. So, if that's enough on that, we'll move on to the next matter, which is to act on a request to close a portion of Shepherd Street. I'm not sure if we have a presentation, but maybe our council is going to share something.
Members of council, we had a public hearing last week on whether or not to close a portion of Shepherd Street west of Meeting, and I asked that you not take action because we're trying to work something out to make sure that the Charleston water system was comfortable with the closure, and I got confirmation this week that they are. So the matter is back before council for your action.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, Mayor, I need to go back. Jennifer mentioned that the council member Waring said that he was going to send the item back to the planning commission so that they could vote again. You didn't use the formal words of referral. You said send back, so we could have a formal motion that says referral.
Okay.
Send back, defer and send back.
Well, defer, I move that we defer and send back. asking for a 60%
Second.
override.
We now officially added the word defer in addition to send back.
Exactly.
We may have inferred that we were deferring. All in
Yes.
favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay.
And it's the same
Okay. So next, we'll go to our council committee reports. First up is our Committee on Public Works and Utilities, Councilmember Williams. We have a motion to approve already.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. So those there are things. Next, we have our Committee on Ways and Means. Councilmember Moody. Councilmember Moody, before you begin, could I just make a comment about the budget, which I wasn't here last week while y'all acted upon first reading on a number of our budgets. And this might have gone said by someone last week, but I just wanted to share with you that Amy and our joint budget and finance staff, Matt and Kathy and everyone, they really did a remarkable job. We had a very challenging, we do have a very challenging budget year for next year. We had $4 million piled on top of us by the state government, by the requirement for us to increase our contribution to the retirement fund. We didn't have the greatest year on our self-insured health plan. We didn't have the best year on our workman's comp. So altogether, just those three items added $4 million to our budget in a time when we really needed to set a priority of looking after those hardworking employees that you mentioned a little while ago, Councilmember Waring, because they do work so hard. And I could share statistics about the few extra employees that we've added over the last 10 years and the many additional services that they add and the many additional citizens that they service, from everything from picking up garbage to inspections to police protection and fire protection to everything that we do. So there's been a tremendous pressure on those employees. And so the goal of trying to give a cost of living increase adjustment to our employees was so important. And so we've been able to achieve a 3% cost of living adjustment for city employees, an adjustment for our pay plan for our firefighters, which has been a long time coming. And then after we did the 3% COLA, in order to achieve our goal of raising our minimum wage for those who make the least in our city, we elevated their base pay just a little bit more, so we got it to $11.50 an hour for our hardworking but least paid employees. So those three things were a top priority for me, and I think for this council. And I know again that it was difficult because of the constraints of those extra expenses. And so my other shout out, in addition to our staff, is in fact to you, because we weren't there, at the end of November. We needed some help. We needed your scrutiny. We needed your analysis to help us look at this budget and think about, even though it had been scrubbed, think about every expense that we might be able to do without, and every revenue source that we might be able to maximize a little bit. And collectively, you were very helpful and collaborative and came up to the task, and we were able to achieve the goal of those adjustments for our employees. So I just wanted to thank y'all as well. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I mean, I really appreciate you saying that, but you participated in that too. I mean, it was the department heads led by you had the wherewithal to know that you were okay with us being involved.
Yes, sir.
And that's a big difference. And it made a big difference, and I think it gave all of us an appreciation with what you were faced with, in particular with the retirement, the workers' comp, all the things that you just made mention. So, I mean, you were gracious to us, but I think all 12 of us are certainly gracious in return because, I mean, we were all joining elbows trying to get it done.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate your hard work and obviously the staff that works along with you as well.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Moody?
Just move for approval of the Ways and Means report.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. So next we'll be up for bills for second reading. These are the ordinances that actually also came out of the budget process.
K 1 through 7.
1 and 2, which are the 2017, 2018 municipal accommodating taxes. This is what we agreed to last week, I guess, in our meeting, and so I would move to approve of those.
Second.
Just the ATAX, correct. Second.
Just items 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
As amended.
We're amended.
Wait a minute.
Municipal.
Okay, items 1 and 2. This is the municipal accommodations fee. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, next.
Now we can take,
Okay, well, let's do 3 and then 4. This is the expenses and revenue. The first one is the appropriation, which would be the expense. And I know we had some discussion about, I would move that we approve item 3 as presented, and then if that gets a second, we have I'd like to make an amendment to what we agreed to last time.
second.
I hear a second for purposes of discussion and for nothing else.
Right.
Okay? And
When we met last week on the 11th, in addition to all the things that the mayor talked about, the suspension and all that, and struggling in the report, there were several positions that, in my opinion, we should try to fund, if at all possible.
microphone.
And so, I don't have that sheet in front of me. Whoever's got it, if they'll let me have it. There were 6 or 8 items on there, but the ones that came up was a project matter and capital projects and a grant writer, for crying out loud. If we're not going to try to go out and get some money, the grant writer ought to pay for themselves. And these 4 items added up to about $313,000, these positions. 313, I think, 315, yeah. So I would make a motion that we amend our budget to add those 4 positions, and to when we get over the revenue side, we'll need to pay for those out of our fund balance. And we believe that that we can have enough money in our fund balance. We've got a target of 20%. We've got a lot of FEMA or repair work that's been done as a result of the storms. We've deducted all those expenses, and we're going to get something back from FEMA, and we think we can pay for those. But we've got some critical issues that we need to get started. So I would make a motion that we amend that budget, those expenditures, those positions, and the revenue for $315,000.
I'll second that. But I think there were 4 positions?
4 positions, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Articulate the 4 positions again.
Yes, that added up to.
Second.
You have a second, Councilmember Waring?
Want me to go through the 4 positions, or we can just approve the 315? But as I recall, it was
Well, it was a clerk of court's office, project, capital projects.
Clerk of
Clerk of
council.
council.
Clerk of council, yeah, clerk of council, yeah. The grant writer and the IT network manager.
And the maintenance person.
Well, I said the Parks Capital
Okay,
Project
all right.
person, yeah.
So, yeah, and to me, I must say that it seems like a no-brainer that we need to fully fund this grants writer because we have so many flooding and drainage projects that we will be pursuing, that we want to be able to apply for each and every kind of assistance from the state and the federal and even private donations if we can get them. So I think that position will pay for itself. I would like to share with council and the public that even though the city incurred considerable expense during Hurricane Matthew and Irma, and we've already expensed those items, any reimbursement that we might receive back from FEMA, and we certainly will get some sizable dollars back from FEMA from those two declared events, that will become income to us when we receive it, and only when we receive it, and we certainly anticipate receiving some of those funds in 2018. So I would respectfully support the motion, but would add the caveat that unless we have other unfunded positions or savings, as we call it, in employees, or receive or have certainty of receipt of reimbursement on some of these funds from Matthew and Irma, that we actually hold off on the expenditure until we know one of those two things can make sure that we proceed without having to use any reserve funds. Yes, sir.
So I appreciate the sort of caveat that you added to it. One of the challenges that I have with funding ongoing position, and I don't have a challenge of position, let me point that out. What I do have is we need to be mindful of anything that creates an ongoing expense, not funding it with a one-time pool of money. And that's by using something other than general fund. That's what we end up doing. So one, I would say that, and even with the FEMA dollars, that's still a one-time replacement. So I'm okay with supporting moving forward with the caveat that we ensure we have those funds before we fill the positions. However, I would point out that we need to be very mindful that this does not become the norm or behavior that we want to incur annually in our budgeting cycle, because we will start to have an impact on our bond rating by doing such. And then, so therefore, I would also state that make sure that as we move forward in 2019, this 300 is going to be there, and we don't know where we're going to make up for it just yet. But hopefully, property taxes and values may increase and so on and so forth. But I can't say that we can rely on that. We had a very tough year this year. And I don't know that it's going to be easier as we move forward. And this is the same circumstance as when we accept COPS grants and put 2, 3, 4 officers on payroll only to have that funding in a number of years later. And then we still have to fund those. And so, again, I support the initiative based on the caveat that we ensure we have funds for it. But this should not be, as a going concern policy, that we adhere to when we do budgeting moving forward. I think it's bad policy if we do it on our own ongoing basis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilmember White. I think we need to make sure we have those positions funded. I have some concern about ongoing recurring positions and how we're going to continue to fund them going forward. So again, the budget process begins when this budget process ends. We need to think about it. And I have a particular question about one of those positions, which is the grant writer. given the fact that there's been a pronouncement from at least one of the bond rating agencies out there, that being Moody's, that they're going to be looking at our budgeting process and everybody's budgeting process across the country to determine how we are preparing in the future and planning in the future for, among other things, sea level rise, water inundation, all of the things that we're subject to. And we do currently possess a AAA bond rating, and we're going to put a bond writer in place, a grant writer in place, which is a good idea. We should have that. What department is that person going to be working in, and what will their charge be? And will it be something that we can make sure our rating agencies know that we are, among other things, taking that person to answer the call, not just from our citizens, but from the people who give us our credit rating, which we're going to need going forward to build the infrastructure, that person will be, among other things, determined to focus on our infrastructure needs, particularly when it comes to flooding.
So our budget does include the full funding, full-time, of our Chief Resiliency Officer.
Right, I know that.
Mr. Wilbert over here. And to tell you the truth, that's just the kind of thing that Moody's is looking for, that we are insightful enough to have a Chief Resiliency Officer and to be looking at the long-term plans of resiliency and sea level rise. That's exactly what our strategy has been and will continue to be. So I think already we're ahead of the game in terms of Moody's requirements.
And I agree, and we've just got to keep playing that game and keep going. And I just, as far as the grant writer goes, whose department is that person going to be in? That's Amy? Amy, is that?
I think so, yeah, that's what we're
Okay.
talking about.
I just want to know where that person will be. Thank you.
Budget and finance.
Budget and finance, okay. Excellent.
Mr. Wilbert is going to be reporting to the mayor, to me.
So this grant writer would be reporting to
Amy. That's right. Mr. Ware.
I just had a question, Ms. Warren. I agree with Councilmember White and seeking all that's been said. Our retirement obligation next year, will it be reduced any?
Yes, so this year it was almost $2 million. Next year it'll be between 1.1 and 1.2, so it won't be as bad.
And based on that 315,000, that may be a source to fund those positions. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, further discussion, Mr. Moody.
Yeah, I agree with what Councilmember White said also. I think we got it funded for 1 year. One difference between these COPS grants and stuff like that is they fund it for 3 years and then we got to pick them up, but we're required by law to fund those things. I mean, if we don't have the money, we can cut these out. I mean, if we don't come up with the money this year, either through additional taxes or grants or whatever, we can stop this or something else. But those things, we're required to keep funding them, at least for some time. So a little bit of difference here, but not much. But your thought and your perception of where we ought to be is spot on.
So if I could bring up one other point about this part of the budget, and I think it's on. Yeah, I got the green light. Maybe it's not far enough up. And I was going to come back to this, and of course wasn't with you last week. That we have our community assistance monies that we have a process that's reviewed by staff, and there were a lot of different organizations that applied for assistance from the city, and we decided at our workshop a few weeks ago that we would basically cut $65,000 or thereabouts from that budget, and I certainly was supportive of that. Now, as it turned out, you know, and respectfully, we had a good committee of council, you know, look all through the budget, and they went through those requests and selected some losers, if I may say. They cut some folks out of the budget that had been approved by our regular process. And Councilmember Gregory, I had wanted to pick up on your thought of, you know, rather than, since we had that process and I felt like it was fair and had been reviewed by staff, that instead of, you know, selecting certain folks that would not get any funding, that we just take that $65,000 across the board and reduce everybody by whatever percentage that is. And I just felt like that would be more fair. and I wasn't here last week to make that proposal to you. But if y'all don't mind, I think that's fair. And with all due respect, you know, if a different group of council members had scrutinized that list, they might have picked different organizations. And maybe next year we do it differently. But I just felt like that would be more fair and across the board. At this point, it wouldn't cost us a dime. It would be the same difference, if that makes sense.
So we just need to amend the motion on the floor?
If you're willing, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know specifically which ones they were, and I'm not dead set against it. I guess if you start doing it, I've got a couple more I'd like to put in. It's kind of where I was going. So, I mean, it was not an easy process. It was not an easy process, and I grant that. And sometimes, you know, we step on somebody's toes a little bit. Hopefully, we don't stomp on their toes. But if that's what the council wants, in the interest of getting the budget passed, I really got to be sure that Amy goes home tonight with an approved budget. If not, we have got to get Amy approved budget tonight. So if that'll take a few $100s away from everybody, I guess that'd be all right.
I seconded that, so I amend your second. That's where you come in.
And one other thing, while we're talking about those,
the clerk had a question, Councilman.
I'm sorry?
The clerk had a question on your motion.
Well, we have the amendment to approve, we have a motion to approve number 3.
Right.
We have amendment to add $315,000 for up to 4 positions. And then we have an amendment that would evenly distribute the $65,000 reduction amongst the community assistance grant.
All right. The only thing I was
And I second it, so.
I said okay with that's amendment. The thing that I wanted to kind of mention, I wanted to really pick up on what Council Lady Wilson said last time, is that our process on this, some of these A-tax and H-tax and these community investment things, we really are going to have a problem with financing a lot of our infrastructure. And we kind of need to start looking at this stuff, you know, not just giving away or whatever the taxpayer dollars, but how are we going to use those, maybe compare some of that to grants, to building infrastructure that we need for the citizens. So I think we need to take a little bit harder look at that maybe, and how we do it.
We agreed at our last meeting to form a separate committee, did we not, for
I think that was just for hospitality.
Right, and we already have one for accommodations. So,
we need to put it all together. And
We were talking about
all of it is what
making it a bigger committee and looking at budget issues, which including those in that. I think we did talk about that last time, Mayor, when you were here.
What would y'all think about putting the audit committee to better use?
What committee?
The audit committee.
Totally. I mean, I think that's a pretty good place to start. It's a committee of the whole, but we still need to have a working group out of that committee of the whole if we're really going to get some, you know, you can't expect everyone to
come
show
with some recommendations.
Yeah. I'd support that, but I do think it needs to include A-tax, H-tax, a budget portion of it, as Councilmember Shade has been working on and talking about. So it's a natural place to start. We just need to define what the role will be within, if we do it through the audit committee, what the role will be and how we can have a subcommittee that's a working group to bring back reccommendations to this.
Frankly, it probably ought to come under Ways and Means under Finance. I mean, that's really where it ought to be.
That's where it ought to be.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I think we have an opportunity, and we've seen, we've witnessed what's happened on this budget year with.
Mr. Chairman, can we carry the motion first and then continue discussion?
Can I?
We can. Is there any?
Whatever.
Any other discussion regarding?
No, that's okay. We can just get it passed.
What's on the floor?
I need to correct the dollar amount. It's $61,700. It wasn't $65,000. And then I need Francis.
61.7.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, while she's coming, finance and this group and everybody that worked so hard, you think if we go back to amend this budget to try to spread that 61,000 that she just said out, it's a holiday. We've worked finance to death already. Now we're gonna send them back to the budget to try to figure this thing out before
I
January
could do
1st?
this in a spreadsheet in about 5 minutes, I assure you. It's just a simple division, get one number and apply it against about 20 numbers. It would take me 5 minutes with the spreadsheet.
We're handwriting the amendments in because the ordinance needs to be in final.
All right. So while they're handwriting that in, could I go back to Councilmember Shade's comment? In the interest of time, Councilmember Shade, back to you.
Yeah, so I just think that we witnessed firsthand this informal ad hoc committee of White, Waring, and Moody as they're going back and looking at this budget and coming up with these recommendations. And I just want to make sure everybody's clear. This is your budget, Mr. Mayor. You set the priorities for the city as to what direction you want the city to go. This is not tinkering with your priorities and your responsibilities in leading the city forward on this budget. However, if we become just a little more involved on these issues ahead of time, we have an opportunity to assist the mayor, not to water down your authority or your prerogatives, to address these particular issues. Here we are tonight, it's 7:30, and we're making pencil adjustments to the budget, which is fine. We need to be doing that. But it also can address these other concerns that Councilmember Wilson has brought up to us several times as to how we spend this other public fund. So here's an opportunity. We can make it a subcommittee of the Finance Committee or make it out of the Audit Committee. But somehow let's craft this, and I'll sit down with our legal counsel to see how we can prepare an ordinance to address this particular area so that we're of better assistance to the mayor's office on these budgetary issues, because the city's gotten too big, it's become too complicated, and we're going to get blindsided again, if not by the state, on this issue with retirement refinancing, but some other issues going to pop up again. And we just need to be on top of this a little bit better, and we did it. And I think we've all patted everybody on the back, but it's been a tough process, I know, for the finance office to get all this done. So let's look at that, one of the items that we look at in January on a proposed ordinance.
We can happily do that. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
How are we doing?
They're working on 3 and 4 so that the amendments match.
Okay. We're matching amendments. Okay.
You can keep on moving until they finish.
About number 4?
Delay the vote on number 3.
We can delay the vote on number 3. They're working on 3 and 4.
Right,
Okay.
right. That's correct. And they're working on both.
So let's go to item number 5, which is regarding our parking district decal issuance. And I must say, I just briefly read it, but I got a letter today from the College of Charleston. So I would appreciate any update that Councilmember Seekings or any of you may have on this issue. Councilmember Moody.
I also had some discussion about the college students, and they should be discussed without a motion on the floor.
Do we have
I like to make a motion that we accept K5
As amended, please, sir.
as amended.
Second.
Right.
I'll second it.
If you look at, and there was a sheet put on everybody's table that has K5 up at the top. If you look down at 3A triple I, in terms of what you have to have in order to get a parking decal. So it says a valid South Carolina vehicle registration or proof of payment of Charleston County vehicle registration fee and a valid lease. So what it really says is if you're a student at the College of Charleston or somebody like that, then you have leased a piece of property to live in downtown, and you don't have a valid driver's license or a county tax bill, and a valid lease, which you can't get a parking. So you rented a place, you literally can't get a parking. So it seems to me like instead of and, or we could put something that says some kind of student registration or student identification and the lease, then you could get a parking ticket. I mean, if you lease the place, you're going to school, you ought to be able to park there.
Yeah.
I'd also like to include military with that, because we have a lot of military that are up at the weapons station, for example, and a bunch of them will rent a home, and they're in the same position.
I see.
Some kind of identification, not just a vehicle license, because it says you gotta have both.
Right.
And I'm saying have a lease, you gotta be proving that you're renting the place, and you gotta be some kind of identification that says you're there more than just a tourist or something.
Councilmember Seeking, then Waring.
So, yeah, that's all okay with me. We did talk today to President McConnell's office, not to President McConnell directly, but to Mr. Patrick, and have worked through this. And there's probably more to come. They are very much supportive of us requiring to have valid student IDs for people that are here. They want to make sure that it's not just anybody coming up and saying we're here. Because as you know, this is about parking in the residential districts, and the math is just this. There are way more people who want to park there than there are parking spaces. And so we have to make sure we meet it out evenly. And one of the things that became apparent to me as we've gone through this process, I got some emails which were interesting today, one of which was me and my 8 roommates all have our own car are going to have trouble getting parking spaces. Well, yes, we have to make sure we take care of that on the side of making sure we're not overpopulating our already overburdened parking spaces. So as you know, we're starting our parking study. I think actually, Mr. Benjamin, like next week. This was not aimed at any particular group of people. It was just to make sure if you're going to get a residential parking sticker in the city of Charleston, you have some indicia of residency. You actually are a resident. And so I, as the chairman of the committee who brought this forward, am open to suggestions to make sure that students who are legitimately living and paying full rents and are active at the College of Charleston or the military can get a parking space, but there has to be some form of showing that you are active. I would support that, but it must be active, because if not, we're going to have all sorts of problems.
And don't we...
Well, dormitories, some are in the parking districts and some are not. So this is mostly people living off campus, which, by the way, 75% of the college students live off campus. And you may remember, Mayor, they went from 3,000 students to 10,000 students and forgot to tell, among other people, the city of Charleston that they were doing that. Right. And so we've been heaped with this infrastructure need. And one of the things that the President's office committed to today, Mayor, and I'm glad you reminded me, is to sit down in the next 2 weeks with you and others to talk about this very issue of the burden that the college puts on our parking infrastructure. And they are keenly aware that it is a problem for us. And it is. I mean, it's just a flat-out problem. We just don't have the spaces. So if Councilmember Moody wants the amendment to show that you have an or and it is an active student ID or military ID, I'm fine with that.
Okay. And don't we limit the number per TMS?
Per TMS
Yeah,
number.
So
that should stay the same.
Yes, that's not changing.
The 8 roommates won't...
That's too bad.
No, but
happen.
it's just funny the types of emails I got.
Right. Okay.
That was my point.
Okay.
Okay. 6 is the cap.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve this with the addition or amendment that
driver's license or active.
License, tax bill, student ID.
Active. Military or student ID. Yes.
Okay.
Active vote.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the part about the a valid South Carolina vehicle registration, that's going away?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I sent 3 kids to school out of city, and none of those cars were in their names. It was in a parent's name. So they're not going to be able to comply with that one, so that's unrealistic.
Right.
That is an issue, by the way, going forward, we're going to have to deal with because they are out of compliance with state law, but we'll deal with that.
That's another matter. Okay, Councilmember Shade?
So I was ambushed this morning by my daughter, who was complaining about her boyfriend who lives downtown, and saw this ordinance, and in addition to the other emails I was besieged with, it became a hot issue in our family this morning. I'm glad we're addressing it, but my main question is, when we talk about these rental properties, aren't we requiring a certain number of off-street parking with this property as well?
No.
And isn't that something, if we're not, isn't that something we need to be addressing long-term as?
We don't even require registration of rental properties in the city, let alone parking spaces. So we got a long way to go.
So I'm throwing that out there because I think there are other ways we can skin this cat in addressing off-street parking requirements and registration of leased property.
Have a business license.
Yes, which will affect me, but that's okay. I mean, that's fair. Yeah, I may need to.
Let me just see if I can bring this around. I think this is something, Mayor, that will come up again shortly in connection with the short-term rental debate that we have, because this will all get consumed in that, and parking will be a central issue there. So we've got the parking study coming. We've heard what the College of Charleston has to say, although the College of Charleston has created some of these problems, is going to have to play ball with us. And we've got the short-term rental issue, so all of this will come back. We're going to have a long debate about parking in the city of Charleston, I think, pretty soon. So in the meantime, active student ID or military ID, a lease, got to have a lease.
And you believe that this addition, this amendment will keep us out of trouble with the president?
Yes, it will. I just got an email from Mr. Patrick. Yes,
Okay.
it will keep us,
Okay.
but it will not stop us from going to visit the president, Mr. Mayor,
Right.
and having a good, long, frank conversation with him about the burdens that the student population puts on our infrastructure.
I've got an idea for him about a parking garage.
Excellent.
Okay.
What I put here, does everybody have a copy of this ordinance? Okay, so under item 1, I've added where it talks about tax receipt, mortgage documents, etc., active student ID or active military ID.
No, it has to be under 3, not 1, number 3.
That should be 3?
Yeah, number 1 sentence by itself, that's property owner.
Okay, so the active should go to number 3?
Yes, ma'am.
So it'll be under valid South Carolina vehicle registration, proof of payment on account.
I thought that was going to be...
You can have that. You don't have to have that. There's other things you can
It's an option, along with the other things.
Correct.
that you just mentioned.
To be an or.
So, the way number 3 reads now is a valid South Carolina vehicle registration or proof of payment of Charleston County vehicle registration fee,
Or valid student ID.
or valid active student ID,
Or valid
or
active military.
valid active military ID.
Active military.
And,
Well,
There's some place on here that says something about a lease.
yeah, that's the next one.
It says and. Right.
Then the lease is item number.
Right.
Right.
well, let me ask a question on number 3, when it says all proof of payment of a Charleston County vehicle registration fee. If they had that in Columbia, my kids in Columbia could not have shown proof of a Richland County vehicle registration fee.
But they have a student ID.
But it's
so they're
not
okay.
or.
I think that's why we're taking
It's
that
a
out.
or, not a and.
Or.
Oh, you're taking that out?
No, we're leaving it, but we're adding student ID.
Oh, yeah, student ID.
It's a or, not a and.
Correct.
Okay.
But this is an opportunity to put the car on
So
their
I think
names.
we have this one ready. Are y'all ready to call the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor of this, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
As amended.
As amended.
Yes.
Aye.
Now for third reading and ratification as
Second.
amended. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
I think so. I said so moved, yeah. I'm ready to go now.
The signature, okay, do you have the signature piece page? Okay. So,
Yeah, after 7.
so I'm going to keep moving on until we till I hear from y'all that we're ready to go back to 3 and 4. We're almost there? Okay. So let's go ahead and take bills up for first reading. We got an ordinance to bring in 1 Riverdale Drive.
7.
Mr. Mayor, we got 6 and 7.
6 and 7 on the second reading.
Oh, yeah. 6 has been deferred,
They want to,
withdrawn.
what they want, the applicant would like to withdraw.
Okay. By request of the applicant. So do I have a motion to withdraw number 6?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6 is gone. Number 7 is
Vote for
the
approval.
matter of billboards, and we have a motion to approve. And did we get a second?
Thank you. White and Mitchell, well, Mitchell and White.
So, this matter, addresses, a kind of coincidental event with the building of the, port access road for the Hugh Leatherman Port Terminal, that when they removed those exits and entry ramps up there, it's in the northern part of our city, close to the southern part of North Charleston, obviously, that a few of the billboards that were there, through no fault of their own, so to speak, had to be removed because of the SCDOT plans to build a new port access road. I understand 3 of the billboards have gone away, and I think 2 of them were able to legally be relocated by the SCDOT because they were so close to where they had to be moved. But this matter would allow those, I believe it's got down to 3 billboards, would be able to be relocated. They're not new, and it's a little contrary to what our standing policy is, but again, there was no fault of anyone's, and it was just a matter of the right-of-way acquisition and relocation for the port access road. So, but for passing this, it would come at some considerable expense to the Port Authority to have to compensate the billboard company for these billboards never being relocated. Any discussion or question? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. So we got that one.
That's it.
Are we ready for 3 and 4 now? Yeah. Okay.
Here are 3 and 4.
So here are 3 and 4. And as amended.
Going forward with them work together.
What Amy did was to actually change the non-departmental total and the total general government fund. She changed the actual numbers to reflect our amendment, which approved the budget and then added the 315,000, correct? And then to just redistribute evenly the difference in the community assistance.
Yeah, I didn't have to do anything with community assistance.
I'm
Because
sorry?
the difference is the same, so I didn't necessarily have to do anything with that.
Right.
So the additional positions, I just put it in provision for salary increases right now because I don't have the breakout between personnel and fringes, so I couldn't do that. So I'm hoping that now you'll just give me permission to do the budget transfers later out of the provision for salary increases to the actual departments when we get the correct numbers. Yes? Okay. And then the community assistance, each of those will be reduced by 12.42%, but sorry, the community assistance, it'll reduce each of them by 12.42%, but we don't like to do dollars and cents, so if it's okay, we'll move it so it's even numbers. Yep. We just do even round numbers. Tens.
Yes.
And so total general fund revenues and financing sources changed to $173,053,203 in total that's just general fund. So total is $212,282,306 general fund, enterprise fund, and total appropriations for both changed to the same, obviously, because it has to be balanced. So
Except the changes to the deficit, if you want to, we can throw in 4 now.
Let's take one thing at a time. We're at number 3. Yeah, item number 3 as amended. Any further discussion?
Well, I hate to, sorry, but because this was part and parcel of our budget discussions last week, and it doesn't carry forward into this conversation because it only required 1 reading, but one of the things that happened during our budgeting process last week, Mayor, you weren't here and now you are, is we reconciled a couple things, one of which is we reconciled the 2017 hospitality tax budget, which doesn't carry forward with this budgeting process. It only requires 1 reading. But during the course of that, one of the things that happened is there was a recommendation that was voted on by council of the $750,000 that were in excess of what we budgeted for 2017, $250,000 be directed towards improvement at Stony Field, and $500,000, and I'm not quite clear on what the ultimate resolution was, but $500,000 would be put into an account to pay for somewhere in the future underground wiring, either at the gateway coming into Charleston from West Ashley or in all of West Ashley. It wasn't clear how that all came about. To which I objected because I think, among other things, the allocation of that $500,000 runs afoul of the statute, which allows for the distribution of hospitality tax. So while we're still talking about the budgeting process, I just want to make sure I get on the record that that is something that I think that we need to look into and get an opinion about as to whether or not that $500,000 is appropriately put aside and dedicated to a use that I don't believe under the state statute is allowable.
Okay. So does that have anything to do with us voting on number 3?
I just want to make sure it's part of our budgeting process and that it gets on the record.
Okay. And we just, okay. Okay. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on number 3 as amended? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for 3rd reading and final ratification of number 3 as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now we move to number 4.
Vote for approval.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just want to echo what Councilmember Seekins just brought up about the $500,000 for Highway 17. And I voted for that last week.
Yes, sir.
And at the time, I raised some questions about it, but I thought it was a great idea because it was addressing part of the gateway into West Ashley. However, as we were going through that issue, I'm just questioning the wisdom of setting aside $500,000 on a beautification project when we've got these other issues that are, and we've been talking about this all night, about flooding and stormwater problems. And here's an opportunity for us to maybe redirect this money, if we're allowed to what we need for flooding issues and stormwater, and including what we brought up with the battery wall that we had just discussed a few moments ago. So I'm wondering if we would consider, Mr. Moody brought this up last week, and that I'm just not sure how much of that $500,000 is going to have an immediate impact on the beautification of Highway 17, which I agree it needs to be addressed. I'm not fussing with that at all, along with other parts of West Ashley, including Sam Rittenberg and other thoroughfares and gateways. However, it may be prudent for us to rethink about taking that money and redirecting it towards issues dealing with flooding and with stormwater runoff. We did vote on increasing our stormwater fees to $2 more per month, which is going to generate a substantial amount of money for, $2 million. Yeah, it's going to have a huge impact on on that. So my motion would be to take that $500,000 out and redirect it.
Councilmember, he
Out of
has
order.
a motion on the floor
Okay.
right now.
We have a motion to approve number 4,
Right,
correct?
that's,
Sir?
It's Councilmember Mitchell and Councilmember White made the motion to approve it, so as soon as we get that.
okay, maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's okay.
All right. So back to motion number 4, which is our revenue side of the house. And the bottom line, if you fill in the blank, is that the total to be appropriated is $212,282,306. Correct? Any further discussion on item number 4? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now back to Councilmember Shea.
I think I said what I wanted to say. Maybe I got a little ahead of myself on that, I apologize, but.
Okay. So did you end up making a motion?
I don't think he can because you have to amend the agenda to do
Oh,
that.
that's true.
Yep.
Okay. Councilmember Moody.
As long as we're having a free-for-all, we might as well give it all out there.
Jump in, I mean, yeah.
If we're gonna talk about drainage, I mean, you put those pretty pictures up there of the low battery that was built, and I'm sure it was all built for tourists back in 1939, right? It was built for drainage. And so we're calling tourism dollars, we're calling them drainage dollars. So we've got about 20-something million dollars set aside for that. We put $6 million for tourism dollars in this year's budget, or 2018, and we're being beat up west of the Ashley by the chairman of the West Ashley Commission for $500,000 to beautify West Ashley. That makes no sense to me.
Well, first.
I mean, you know, and when the commission over there said that we ought to be putting the wiring underground in West Ashley, and we put that out there to get that project started. You know, if everybody gets to air their grievance, this is like Festivus for the rest of us. We'll start with the airing of grievances, so that's fine.
Let me respond to that. I'm not beating up on anybody, and I agree with you last week and with this council that we need to address the beautification of Highway 17. And my question only to you was back then is maybe apply it to other parts of West Ashley in addition to Highway 17, including San Brittenberg and Old Town Road. Do not want to take away anything from the revitalization or the beautification of West Ashley, because we need it, and we need it desperately. My question was, in bringing it up, was whether or not it is such a high priority with drainage and stormwater issues, whether or not it would have more of an immediate impact for what we need to be addressing with those issues instead of the beautification. That was my question. I mean, certainly as I mentioned this before, the plan that's going to come before council at some point, hopefully in the immediate future, is going to be addressing these specific issues about beautification that we need to be doing. And I don't want to take funding away from that. That's not my purpose or my goal. I want the record to be clear about that. I'm not beating up on anybody who's making this motion, because I think it's a great idea.
Right.
I'm just asking whether or not the more important impact, the immediate impact would be on those other issues. That's all I was bringing up.
Councilmember Wagner.
Yeah, I thought this was a closed item as of last week. This was only the hospitality money, right? One reading, it's over and done.
Right.
Now we're trying to go back to it, it looks like. You know, well, I mean, that's what it looks like.
All right.
Yeah.
My question is whether or not it is an appropriate use of the funds under the state statute, and I think we need to get an answer to that.
Right. And I think we agreed didn't y'all agree last week that we would make that request?
Let me kind of address that. I actually made an inquiry of one of the officials, and I got a response back. I wish I had the email with me, I can get it, but basically the response was that they were not in the position or not in the, of giving advanced opinion. So I don't know whether we'll get one or not. They said they usually just deal with it after you do it. And so, I mean, that was the response I've got. I'll be glad to send the email out to everybody, but that was pretty much
No
what I got.
backhoes out there right now. I swear, I came right by there just a little while ago. We're not digging up in the ground to bury anything.
Well, just to let everyone know, upon really Councilmember Moody's request, we had an adjustment to our capital project budget for Fire Station 11, the new fire station that's going next to the memorial site, and we included funding for next year when we build that to put that little section of Savannah Highway underground, the utilities, so that we could set an example as to what it would look like. And I wasn't here last week, but you know, I believe we should take a closer look at our undergrounding program, because it's all been about neighborhoods, which is important, but there's also commercial areas that need to be addressed as well. We get money from SC&G every year for our underground fund, and we have this list of neighborhoods who've signed up to go underground, and they're not ready to move forward. So I believe we should take a close look at how do we add commercial areas to our undergrounding program and be able to allow people who get permission, you know, to maybe move on up the list a little bit. But anyway.
Well, I wanted to ask Ms. Wharton, although she's had a long neck, and we all have, how much money in the 2018 between hospitality and accommodation tax money did this council vote, and we probably vote to finalize it tonight, to go to the battery wall? No.
$5,495,000.
Okay. Between the tax money and the H-tax money.
The municipal accommodations
That's
tax
right.
and hospitality, yes.
That's right. Now, how much money, we've been through almost a year of meeting with the hard work by all concerned, namely in particular our chairperson. How much money was requested to go towards anything to do with West Ashley's revitalization in 2018? The commission recently voted unanimously to bring it forward. How much money are we appropriating to engage anything to do with West Ashley's revitalization in 2018?
Other than the projects
I want you to
that we
speak
have
into the
planned.
microphone.
Other than nothing for revitalization that came to me, no, but yeah,
So nothing has even been asked.
right.
So when an amendment comes in for 500,000, and we all know that's going to do probably about 500 feet, maybe 500 feet. The problem was we didn't ask for enough.
Maybe that may be the
That's right. And one of the things that I would like to ask, and this is a time for me to ask, I was going to do it at miscellaneous, but I would like to ask, because the mindset for revitalization, Mr. Mayor, is going to have to change from where it's been for the last 20 years. So you didn't have anything to do with the last 20 years. So, accommodation tax monies, both state and municipal, as well as H-tax monies, until 2015, 100% of those dollars always came to the Peninsula initiatives. 0 went West Ashley. So what I am requesting is a simple report from inception of the H-tax money for each fiscal year, how many dollars were generated, how much went towards Peninsula initiatives, and how much went towards West Ashley initiatives. And the same thing with tax money. From inception, how much money was generated, how much money was placed towards Peninsula objectives, and how much money was placed West Ashley. And let me tell you why I'm saying that. We have roughly about 30,000 people in the city on the Peninsula. We have an excess of 72,000 people West Ashley, and that's not counting James Island and certainly Johns Island. If we are going to revitalize West Ashley, the mindset has to change. And the reason I said that is we've had people who have been trained in our staff to spend those dollars on Peninsula only. If you've been working in capital projects for 15, 20 years, and every time those dollars came available, you would request for needs on the peninsula. There was never a process to include the areas west of the peninsula. We have pretty close to now almost 20 hotels West Ashley. And what we were told, not you, Mr. Mayor, we were told that tourists don't go West Ashley. The problem was nobody was thinking systemically on initiatives that would help to revitalize West Ashley. So the process of this year between state accommodation tax, municipal accommodation tax, and H tax, what did they total, Ms. Wharton? It's upwards of $24 million.
Yeah, it's over $20 million.
16.
Yeah.
Okay, was it 16,990? Okay, so that's 17 million, okay? Aid tax was slightly more than 7 million, right?
State A tax, yeah.
State aid tax.
Right.
And what was the municipal tax, around 3?
Municipal is 6.
Okay, that's between 28 and 29 million. When the draft budgets came forward for us as council members to review, 830,000 out of in excess of $27 million was going to be spent west of the Ashley or on west of the peninsula objectives. West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island. We are not going to be able to revitalize the largest geographical areas west of the peninsula with, when you calculate $830,000. This is before council member the 500,000, before any amendments. 27,830,000 going West Ashley. And then you all get upset when we make an amendment. We are not spending enough West Ashley. We have to find another way to prorate these dollars. Because between one TIF on Sam Rittenberg and not being able to access A tax and H tax money, it's not going to happen. The peninsula got revitalized with UDAG money, grants. You were there as economic development officer. How many TIF districts have we had on the peninsula? A couple of them have already matured. We got about 5 of them now. We are not going to be able to get additional TIF districts West Ashley. It's going to be terribly hard to get the school district to go along with. You've already run into that trying to create the one that we have now, which is a partial TIF. So if the mentality is going to be that in 2019, if we're blessed with 27 million, 830,000 is going to be appropriated for West Ashley and areas west of the peninsula, James and Johns Island, that's not going to fly. We're not going to be successful. We will not have the revenues to do it. So, with all due respect, Councilmember Seekings, when you push back and try to take the surplus, when we have already appropriated dollars out of 2017 H-tax monies for the battery wall, and you knew that. And you knew that we we're voting for almost the better part of $6 million in 2018 for the battery wall, and none is coming West Ashley, virtually none, and 500,000 is requested. It was disingenuous. In my opinion, you're certainly entitled to your own. But we are not going to be able to revitalize West Ashley with funding matriculating from the city to areas west of the peninsula that way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'll say it one more time. We need to get a handle on these taxes. I've been complaining about this for years. I can't tell you, I've voted against the accommodations tax most every year I've been on this council because we refuse to help ourselves. Regarding West Ashley, we aspire to the 50th percentile. We think a grocery store is economic development. That's our standard right now. I challenge you all to elevate the standard and get bold and think big instead of thinking about a grocery store and a new facade on a shopping center. Big deal. That's not economic development. And until we make some very fundamental changes with this excess money that does have allocation for tourism, we allow ourselves to be bled by a couple of things. And every year they come about in this budget. I mean, right now the seawall is bleeding us. I understand it's a project of some urgency, but it's bleeding us. The ballpark bleeds us every year. When are we going to step up and start to create some remedies to address these things and dig ourselves out of some holes that we have created. So I'm moving forward. I challenge you all to do that. If committees are created and there's any kind of citizen input, I'm right here. I know this stuff very, very thoroughly, and I would be more than happy to assist you with it. But please elevate your standard, quit aspiring to the bronze all the time, and let's do something big and bold.
Councilmember Wagner, 5 seconds, you said.
5 seconds. I'm going to summarize Mr. Waring's statements. 3% of the money, 66% of the population. End of story.
Councilmember Shea.
And just so,
And then let's please move on.
and Kathleen Wilson, be careful, since you volunteered, we will put you to work, so don't go too far. But I just want to emphasize that what Councilmember Moody and Waring are saying is that we've got to have adequate, and would not had that adequate funding in West Ashley to revitalize it, and hopefully with the economic development that we have over there, to the standard that Kathleen Wilson is talking about, that we will get more hospitality and accommodation tax coming out of the West Ashley area as well.
Okay.
So thank you all for those comments.
Thank you all. Now, for bills up for first reading.
Are we on our program?
We have one, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes, any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have an amendment to the agenda to accept an annexation petition.
So moved. So moved. You second it. That's the amendment.
Yeah.
I already know what it is, so. I already know what it is. I already know what it is, so I'm gonna
Potted plant.
Ready?
Yes. Council?
Mayor, members of council, yesterday, late afternoon, I received 2 petitions that had been executed by the requisite number of freeholders who had the requisite amount of assessed value in 2 areas west of the Ashley requesting annexation to the city. Both of these petitions are 75% petitions, which means that not all of the property owners have signed the petition to come in. But there is a provision under state law which allows this type of annexation. But unlike the normal annexations that you do every day or most weeks, this annexation both of these annexations will require a public hearing that has to be noticed on 30 days notice, and no action on the petition can be taken until that public hearing has been noticed and held. And so tonight, I just wanted to advise you of the petition. It's a substantial amount of acreage west of the Ashley in the Plantation District. The maps that I gave you show where the location of both of these lands are. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but the purpose of bringing these forward tonight is to ask you to accept the petition and to provide authorization for the public hearing to be noticed.
I move that we accept the petition and move forward.
And a second as called for to accept the petitions and to properly advertise for the
Public hearing, correct.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Any further business come before this council tonight? If not, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, God bless you all, thank you, and Happy New Year.